Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to this post-debate commentary, a long time coming, on the debate I had with Aron, the atheist YouTuber and speaker. So, inshallah, I'm going to give a commentary on the debate, inshallah. I'm going to try to limit it to about 3 hours of commentary, inshallah. And I'm going to be looking at your comments on the live chat. So definitely put in your thoughts, your questions. I'll try to read as much as I can and answer any kind of super chats as I can, inshallah. So this, I think before getting into the actual commentary on the debate, it's important to reflect on our intentions. I think niyyah is really important. The Prophet ﷺ said that actions are only by intentions. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And what is the intention with debate? What is the purpose of debate? Because sometimes we get caught up in the excitement, the confrontation of debate, the argument, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we have to bring it back to intention and what is the purpose. And the purpose for me is da'wah, is calling to Islam, is to really show how Islam is superior to these other ways of life, these other religions, philosophies, worldviews, and to establish that in this kind of confrontational, argumentative way. And that's the intention, and the intention should be for the sake of Allah. And that's what we have to strive for, because your intention, you have to constantly reset it, you have to focus on it, you have to make it, you have to be mukhlis, for the sake of Allah, ikhlas. And that's a constant struggle. That's a constant struggle for everyone. You can never sit back and say, yeah, this is, I'm doing this for Allah, and of course Allah is going to accept. And no, there's no guarantee that Allah accepts anything that we do. We have to have hope that He accepts, but we also have fear that He will reject. Because why? Because we're not sincere. We show ourselves as sincere, but actually hidden deep inside, not visible to anyone, is nifaq, is hypocrisy. And the hidden hypocrisy will destroy your deeds, because they don't count. You and there are hadith of the Prophet ﷺ saying that you will have a qari, or an alim, or a mujahid, goes before Allah and says, I fought for your sake, I read Quran for your sake, I taught Quran, I taught deen for your sake, Allah. And then Allah says, no, you lie. You did it for people. You did it so that people would say, oh, you're such an amazing debater, you're such an amazing fighter, you're such an amazing scholar. That's the reason that you did it. So this is, we have to constantly reset our intentions and make sure that we are sincere. And that goes for everyone watching as well, in the comment sections, and fighting for the sake of Islam. May Allah reward you, and may Allah purify all of our intentions so that it actually counts on the day of which there is no doubt, where we will face our Creator, Allah Azza wa Jal, and He will tell us if we are truthful in our efforts or we are liars. So may Allah protect us. Okay, let's get into the commentary, inshallah. So I'm not going to play the intro, the muqaddimah, for the debate. I think I will play Aron's intro, just so that we refresh. But the point that I made in the intro was very simple, that atheism leads to dystopia. Atheism as an ideology, as it's been practiced, leads to this dystopian future. That's the whole argument, and I explained this step by step. But basically, some of these ideas you're familiar with. The idea that when you adopt an atheistic worldview, it's and a liberal worldview, you emphasize the individual pleasures, individual, pleasure, bodily pleasure through food, drink, sex. These kinds of pleasures are all that there is to life, all that there is to what is good and right. And the atheist project is all about maximizing that kind of liberty, the liberty to do whatever you want, whenever you want, enjoy whatever you want, whenever you want, as an individual. And that is the priority over all else. And there are many things in life where you have to put your pleasures and your individual wants and dreams, your individual choice to the side and say, no, there's a higher thing that I have to sacrifice my own individual interests for, my own individual wants for. You have to sacrifice for your family. You have to sacrifice for your marriage. You have to sacrifice for your community. You have to sacrifice for your nation, for your ummah, for your community, for the sake of God, for the sake of Allah. These are the kinds of sacrifices that humanity has to make for those institutions to survive. But if people are told constantly, no, and prioritize your individual wants above all else, right? Don't, worry about taking care of your parents when they get older in their old age. Don't worry about that. Like, your parents are mean to you. Your parents are rude. Your parents don't respect you. Your parents don't respect you as an individual. So they're toxic. You have to cut them out and focus on your career, focus on your dreams. When it comes to marriage, marriage, when you get time for it, right now, focus on your career. Don't you want to take that amazing vacation? Don't you want to buy that amazing new device, that amazing new phone? Don't you want to establish yourself as a strong career woman or a strong, whatever? Forget about marriage for now. Like, that can come later. Children, you don't have time for kids. So these kinds of decisions we're constantly be programmed by the atheistic culture, the secular liberal culture, to make these individualistic decisions at the cost of these other values, these other institutions like marriage, family, community, religion, God, and even our human body, our human being a human being, even that can go down the gutter. And I explain what that means in the opening statement, because through gene editing, through all kinds of artificial technologies like that can be implanted into the body or genetically edited into the body, or uploading your consciousness through Neuralink to the cloud, then even like you as a human being, even that can be sacrificed for achieving more individual choice, more individual pleasure, reducing pain, reducing any kind of pain or suffering or toil. So technology is what plays a huge part in this destruction. And that's what I point out. It's like you have the atheistic worldview, and then you have technology. And technology and this kind of atheistic, liberal, secular worldview work together to create this dystopia. And in previous debates, I've given all kinds of statistics on how bad things are getting in the liberal world, the liberal, free, wonderful world that we supposedly live in, the best of times that we supposedly live in. We're heading to this dystopia step by step, where we're going to live in the pods and eat the bugs. Right? So I paint this image of the Matrix. The Matrix, which is a film, and in that film, you have these machines that have enslaved humanity, and they've enslaved humanity by harvesting the energy of the human body, But so they need the human body, but but humans would respond by fighting back and revolting against this machine control. So what these machines do is somehow they plug the human beings into this matrix, into this false reality, this false world where humans just don't realize that they're enslaved. The reality, however, is that the humans are living in these pods, suspended in this pink goop, and their bodies are being harvested, their energy is being harvested, but they're in another virtual reality. And that's pretty much, that's that kind of image is metaphorical in the movie. For the filmmakers are presenting this as a metaphor for modern life. Modern life is like the Matrix, in the sense that people are in this dream world where they think that they're living their best life, that they are living in the real world. But the real world is something else. And humans are just deluded and don't realize what's actually going on behind the scenes. The people who are in control, who have enslaved humanity. You think that you're free. You think that you are living a life of choice, but in reality, you are alone in the apartment by yourself, watching TV, watching, YouTube, and you have no wife, you have no kids, you have no family. You're just eating, sleeping, going to work, repeat. This is your world. And you think that you're free. You think that you're free and you're living in all your physical pleasure, all your physical needs are being met, and you're experiencing pleasure. You're experiencing the pleasure of infinite pornography and infinite, the food that you want to eat will come right to your door from any kind of cuisine that you want. You are living in an air conditioned apartment, putting your feet back. You have all of your physical needs are being met, and you are experiencing a lot of pleasure. So this is a great situation, right? This is a great situation, right? This is the delusion. This is the delusion that's created by the Matrix. So it was always a kind of analogy for, modern capitalist life. But what's happening is that this has become more than just an analogy or a metaphor. This is becoming real because you have organizations and world leaders who are calling for this type of reality where people are literally supposed to live in pods, individual living pods. So I'll show you some pictures. So I mentioned this in the debate. So these are micro homes in China. You can see here, they're actually pods that people will live in. They will sleep in that, and all their possessions are in that individual pod. See? This is increasingly common in China. They have like luxury, these are the luxury versions. So this is something that is being rolled out. And I think you can even order. You can even order from Alibaba. You can order a pod if you want to live in one. They'll deliver it to you. You want to live in the pod. Okay. So fine. This is China, and we know about the Chinese social credit system. Um, so this people will say, well, that's just there. That's not something that we're going to have in the West or in the rest of the world. No. But I hate to break it to you, but this stuff is coming to the West as well. So let me share the other screen. So the World Economic Forum is basically an international forum where you have world leaders, experts, academics come together and they discuss the future and the way to govern these societies, the way to maximize prosperity. It's an extremely liberal atheistic organization. And many world leaders like Justin Trudeau, Emmanuel Macron, um, the new UK Prime Minister, like all of these high officials are affiliated as fellows of the World Economic Forum. And Klaus Schwab, the leader of the Economic Forum, will brag about how many individuals he has in different governments who are working on his agenda. And those things are online. You can find them. I'm going to limit what I show on the stream because I don't want to get the stream taken down. But I'll share you some quotes here. Now, here's one of the main things. So here's one of the members of Parliament of Denmark who World Economic Forum tweeted her. And she was saying, welcome to 2030. So this is Vision 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy and life has never been better. So this is the model that they have for 2030. And this is what the Great Reset is all about. The Great Reset that the World Economic Forum has discussed and published papers, published books. This is Klaus Schwab right here with a plate of bugs because this is the new sustainable protein. Cows are not sustainable. You can't have red meat. You can't have chicken. You can't have lamb. That's not sustainable. There's too much greenhouse gases from these cows farting up a storm. So we have to have bugs. You know, this is the new protein that you can process into all kinds of foods. You have like mealworms and crickets. You know, this is what is being pushed. And this idea of I own nothing and have no privacy and life has not never been better. This is the idea. Like you're going to be in a pod. You won't own the pod. The pod is government provided. But guess what? You won't have to work. You won't have to do any kind of labor because it's just government provided. The government provides your food. The government provides, you know, everything. You live in the pod. There's no privacy, obviously. How can there be privacy in a pod? You know, your sexual needs are met through new technologies, virtual reality technologies, pornographic technologies. You aren't going to be depressed because guess what? We have this kind of antidepressant that we can inject directly into you, or we can put it in your food, in your cricket-based food. Will keep you happy, and life has never been better. Like this is a utopia. You won't ever be hungry. You won't ever be depressed. You won't ever be lonely because look, you're going to be constantly connected to the entire world through social media. This is what they have in store. This is what they have planned for us, and people are very compliant with these kinds of plans in different parts of the world, like China. People are not resisting. See, here's another World Economic Forum tweet, if you can see it. You will own nothing and you'll be happy. This is how our world could change by 2030. So this guy has become like a meme, like this smiling face. Like it doesn't even look human almost. It looks like a computer image. computer generated image. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. So this is the model of no private property. You don't need private property. You don't need a house or a car. You don't need a computer. You don't need, like, why? Like, just everything can be government provided, and you just live in the pod. If you need to get from one place to the other, just get in the Uber, the self-driving Uber. That self-driving technology will take you to where you want to go, and that's it. Like, that's your life. So this is the vision that they have. Your travel is going to be restricted as well, because why do you need to go far out of the city? Like, no, you stay in your city. There's no travel. Only important people travel from city to city, from mega city to mega city. And there's no reason for you to, why do you need to travel? You won't have any friends or family to visit. And if you really want to see them, you have your social media technology, virtual reality technology, the meta technology that Mark Zuckerberg is developing. You'll have that. So you don't really need to travel to go very far. And we've already seen the way that they restricted travel for, certain reasons. Like, oh, you don't have the papers, you don't have the injections required to travel, or there's a certain disease that's rampant. You can't travel. You have to stay locked down. They've already, like, rolled out every component of this new world, and they've beta tested it basically on the population, and they saw, like, where the populations were compliant and where they were not compliant, and they are tweaking the system to make it go more smoothly when they fully roll out this system. It's just a step-by-step process. And again, this is not like we're not just theorizing something that is far-fetched, that no one has ever talked about. They're openly talking about this. They're openly planning exactly what I'm describing to you. So let me show you something else real quick. All right. If you really want to know more about this kind of plan that the global elites are rolling out, I highly recommend this interview that you can watch. It is with Whitney Webb. Here is the stream. So, how elites will create a new class of slaves, with interview with Glenn Beck, Whitney Webb. Go watch this hour-and-a-half interview, and they describe, like, all the details of this plan and a lot of the material to support this kind of this vision for the future, and what the elites are actually discussing. So I highly, highly recommend you watch this. If you're not aware of all these issues, and even if you are aware, this provides a lot of detail. Again, the title is How Elites Create a New Class of Slaves. It is with Whitney Webb, Glenn Beck and Whitney Webb. Go watch this, number one. Okay, now here's the second thing that I want to share with you. Okay, this is on Mind Matters, so that website. A great reset historian muses on what to do with useless people. Okay, so this idea of useless people. Historian Yuval, interesting, they deleted the video. YouTube deleted the video of these guys talking about it, but it's still described. Historian Yuval Harari, an advisor to Klaus Schwab, co-author with Thierry Mallory of COVID-19: The Great Reset and head of the World Economic Forum, had some interesting things to tell the movers and shakers of the world about ordinary people last April. Again, I think the biggest question, and maybe in economics and politics of the coming decades, will be what to do with all these useless people. Okay. The problem is more boredom and what to do with them, and how will they find some sense of meaning in life when they are basically meaningless, worthless. So Yuval Harari is this atheist, and this is what he's saying. My best guess at present is a combination of drugs and computer games as a solution for most of it. It's already happening. I think once you're superfluous, you don't have power. So this is straight from the horse's mouth. This is Yuval Harari. He is the advisor to Klaus Schwab, and this World Economic Forum involves all of these world leaders that we're talking about. They're all connected. The US government, the Canadian government, the UK government, many of the presidents and prime ministers of the world are part of this forum. And this is Yuval Harari is one of the main philosophers and intellectuals who is guiding the policy and the vision for World Economic Forum. And he basically tells you exactly what the elites think of you and me. We are useless. We are useless. We are living meaningless lives. And they just need a way to keep us in control. They just need a way to distract us so that people stop killing themselves and people stop becoming violent. You have to create a distraction. So the best solution, this is his guess, is a combination of drugs and computer games as a solution. So computer games, antidepressants. This is what's happening at present. So Allahu Alam, what's going to be the case for the future? Only God knows what they have planned in terms of technology to use to distract us and keep us placated in the future. So isn't this scary? Isn't this shocking? Isn't this something that everyone needs to know? What is going on? What plans they have? They're not hiding it, right? They feel so confident and so in control that they can openly talk about this. And it's on YouTube. You can find it very easily online because their forums are publicized. Like when they're having these talks on World Economic Forum, they have a YouTube channel, they have a Twitter page. They're openly talking about this. And for atheists, this actually makes a lot of sense. And in response to the debate that we had, a lot of atheists said, yeah, Daniel was talking about being in the pods, but that sounds great. That sounds like Daniel was talking about gene editing to take us, into some transhumanist future. That sounds wonderful. And even Matt Dillahunty, the head idiot, the head atheist on YouTube, that's according to him. He thinks he's such an amazing, atheist leader who's so important. He's a loser. But he's the one who, in response to the debate, said that, well, some of the things that Daniel said were actually pretty appealing. Some of these things in the future, the Matrix, yeah, that sounds great. They'll even admit it. And there is a post-debate commentary that Aron did with Matt Dillahunty together and some other guy. and they did a whole hour-long commentary on the debate. And I will comment on that post-debate commentary, but I won't do it on YouTube. I will do it for my Elesna students. So on Elesna, we have a weekly halaqa where we have just a live stream for Elesna students, and we talk about all of these, whatever issue that comes up. I lecture, we have a conversation, the students come on stream, and we have a good time, alhamdulillah. So I'm going to save my commentary on Aron Ra atheist commentary for that halaqa, not on YouTube. So if you want to watch that, you want to get part of that conversation, enroll, become an Elesna student. You know, that's if you really want to support my dawah and my efforts, become a student at Elesna Institute, enroll there, and that way you can access a lot more content, a lot, actual courses, formal courses. We're working towards certification for these courses. So join Elesna, and you will benefit from all of the extra content, hundreds of hours of content on there, and also you support the efforts that we're doing, inshallah. So continuing, Harari goes on to outline a transhumanist vision of the future in which brain-computer interfaces make our footedness in the material world obsolete. Human relationships become meaningless due to artificial substitutes, and the poor die, but the rich don't. So rich people, elite people, they're not useless, they're not meaningless, they're important. That's why they can live, their privileged lives. Everyone else is meaningless, useless. Get in the pod, eat the bugs, and you'll be happy. Don't worry about it. You're gonna be perfectly happy with that. Wesley Smith points out, transhumanism boiled down to its bones is pure eugenics. It's called H+ for more or better than human, which of course is what eugenics is all about. So eugenics is this idea that it's not new. This is from the 19th century. It's coming from atheists, Darwinists, and they say, look, if we want the next stage of evolution, we have to make sure that the lesser amongst us, the useless people, don't reproduce. Because when useless people reproduce, they just produce more and more useless people. And we don't want to be drowned in all of these useless people. We want to cull the population, right? That's what eugenics was all about. And this plan that we see from the World Economic Forum is closely tied to eugenics and this project of bringing H+, a better humanity. Alarmingly, transhumanist values are being embraced at the highest strata of society, including in big tech, in universities, and among the Davos crowd of globalist would-be technocrats. That being so, it's worth listening into what they're saying under the theory that forewarned is forearmed. The introductory material for the video tells us who admires Harari's vision. Yuval Noah Harari is a lead advisor for Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab is the author of COVID-19, The Great Reset, and the founder of the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab and World Economic Forum are implementing the Great Reset. Yuval is praised by the likes of Klaus Schwab, Barack Obama, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, who reviewed Harari's latest book on the cover of the New York Times Book Review. Harari speaks of the World Economic Forum at Davos, New York Times, Stanford, TED, and Times Talk. At the time of this writing, his books occupied the top 2 slots on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list. So this is an atheist. He's talking about this, about meaningless humans, useless humans, and he's at the top of the New York Times bestseller list. He is giving lectures at Stanford, at Yale, at all of these major Ivy League universities. He's being featured by the New York Times. He's going and meeting and talking with world leaders. And we read what he thinks about the majority of human beings. They are useless. An aphorism from Harari's own site. History began when humans invented gods and will end when humans become gods. But not all humans, as he makes clear in the video, only the non-useless ones who go along with transhumanism. So history began when humans invented gods. That's the typical atheist line, right? and will end when humans become gods, when they can control the human genome, when they can control technology, when they can use technology to control the masses, control the world. That's when history will end. And this harkens to the idea of the end of history. Fukuyama is the one who put forth this idea of the end of history. And the basic thesis in his book is that liberalism has brought the end of history. We have reached the pinnacle of human progress because we've identified that the greatest value is individual freedom. That is, we've identified that. Therefore, we can get rid of all of these myths, all of these religious ideas, all of these biases, cultural biases can all be thrown out the window because we've identified the greatest human value of liberty. And history is now ended because you just have different groups who make fight, but ultimately is fight for freedom as the victorious ideology, the victorious worldview. And Yuval Harari accepts that, but he says, it's also tied to technology. Humans become gods through technological power. In 2018, Slate accounted for Harari's rapid rise to influence. Yuval Harari, by the way, is Israeli, I think. It's all due to Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, a book based on that survey course that no one else wanted to teach. This is Harari's book. A book that has leapt far beyond the original audience for which Harari intended it and has been embraced by the movers and shakers of Silicon Valley and Hollywood. On the West Coast, half a world away, this young Israeli academic has been informally elected the man best equipped to tell those industries what matters to them most, what will happen next. He can explain why the sleek, friction-free technological utopia they once promised has slid back in primal conflict and turmoil, and he assures them that they, the engineers, the scientists, and the storytellers, still hold the power to radically transform the world. This is his book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. This is what really put him on the map. So, who gave these people the right to radically transform the world? That is the problem with these arrogant people, like these liberal, atheistic, high IQ, supposedly, people who are in charge of big tech, in charge of these major corporations, in charge of government. They think that they know so much more than the rest of us, certainly more than these ignorant believers in religion, these believers in myths, and these people who can't modernize, these people who cling to the traditions of the past. These ignorant, useless people should not be anywhere near power. Us, the enlightened, the scientist, the engineer, the doctor, we're the ones who are in charge. Rightly so. God has not given us this mandate to radically transform the world. No, reason and science have given us the mandate to change the world and to change society. That's literally their understanding of the future and their role in it. Clearly, the prospect of becoming gods when the rest of humanity sinks into uselessness and drug abuse excites some people. But how probable is it? Tech philosopher George Gilder, author of Life After Google and Gaming AI, dismisses the assumption that artificial intelligence is so much better than human intelligence that created it, an assumption that seems implicit in Harari's vision. So AI technology is very critical for this future. Gilder points out that AI has triumphed over humans in games like chess because the map is the territory. Thus, programming for the rules of chess and vast calculation power enable powerful computers to win over humans. Games like chess, Go, poker are vastly more complex than checkers in their degrees of freedom, but they all resemble checkers in one important way. In all cases, the map is the territory, and that limits the resemblance to reality, as Gilder puts it. Go is deterministic and ergodic. Any specific arrangement of stones will always produce the same results according to the rules of the game. The stones are at once symbols and objects. They are always mutually congruent. So this is a critique, a high-level critique of AI and the limitations of AI. But I mean, I have to think about it a little bit more deeply to see if this is a good critique. But we don't want to make the stream about AI. However, that all falls apart in situations where the map is not the territory. That's one reason that AI has had more mixed results in medicine than in Go. Diseases don't have to follow rules. Business professor Jay Richards, I mean, that's the thing. Like, the atheists will say that, well, the world does follow rules. Diseases do follow rules. That's what science is all about, is determining the rules of reality, and the laws of nature, the principles of nature. So this is why this kind of critique won't convince the atheist, the worshiper of science. Business professor, this is all talking about AI. Probably more. Harari considers free will a dangerous myth, a point on which neurosurgeon Michael Enor has taken issue with him here. On the contrary, Enor argues denial of free will is a cornerstone of totalitarianism. Without free will, we are livestock, without the presumption of innocence, without actual innocence, and without rights. That's questionable, that, free will, because in order to, many liberal states, all liberal states, will reduce choice and will restrict people in a totalitarian way for the purpose of maximizing pleasure, for the purpose of maximizing individual pleasure, individual enjoyment. That's why all liberal systems have been totalitarian in nature, including the liberal countries that all of us live in, pretty much. Liberalism is the global hegemonic system. So we'll talk about that when we get into the debate video. All right, so this is just a sample. If you're interested in more of this, go watch that video that I mentioned, Whitney Webb. Look up Yuval Harari. And the whole thing, again, is that this is what atheism is driving us towards. This is the world that atheism wants. And what's his face, Aron or whoever, these atheists just are going to deny it. They're just going to, I mean, look, subhanAllah, like, I'm looking at the chat. Like, this shows how, subhanAllah, stupid some of you are. Deobandis are misguided. I'm talking about the end of humanity. I'm talking about the destruction of the human race here. This is what this is about. And you morons are arguing about this. How stupid are you, subhanAllah? How completely moronic you are. Your whole existence is being planned. These people are planning to wipe you out, and your whole existence, your whole future, and you are talking, this Deobandis are misguided. How utterly moronic are you and all of you people here that are arguing this? Wake up. Wake up. Like, what is really the enemy here? What is really the system that is coming? Yeah, they want you to debate and argue like this kind of issue amongst Muslims, like divide Muslims up so that they don't critique secularism, so that they don't critique the liberal reforms that are happening. I mean, that's the problem with these medkhalis, these rankhalis. That's exactly the problem with them. Why? Because when we are putting out this criticism of liberalism, and we're critiquing the governments that are going along with this liberal secular system, we're pointing that out and we're saying, look, this is the system that these Muslim rulers are putting us in order to put us part of this liberal global system that is going to lead to this dystopia where everyone is in a pod. Everyone in the pot eating the bugs. We're saying, no, we have to critique liberalism. We have to critique liberalization. This is part of Amr bin Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, to criticize these rulers for what they're doing, for playing into this system of ultimate destruction, this evil. And the Madkhalis are basically agents of this system that I'm describing to you. The Madkhalis are the agents who are they're the Muslim wing, the Muslim enforcers who want to make sure that Muslims are going to be in the pods and eat the bugs. And you morons, subhanAllah, you Medkhalis are really the stupidest kind of people that you will ever come across. And it's very clear from the way that they talk and the way that they have these non-responses to very basic critiques. I mean, I think my followers, alhamdulillah, like on this channel, you realize how stupid, like even when they have like a response, like I put out an hour-long academic, meticulously cited response, and they don't even understand like the points that are made. Like they can't even understand. All they do is regurgitate the same talking points. It's like arguing with a wall. The wall at least is useful. The wall holds up the roof. I don't know what the use of these madkhalis are other than to, while we're talking about the end of humanity, they want to argue whether Deobandis are useless or good or not, or on the right, are the saved sect or not. Are they the saved sect? Who's the saved sect, guys? Let's figure out who's the saved sect. SubhanAllah. Jazakallah khair for your super chats, guys. Here's a couple. Daniel, may Allah preserve your work. Continue to slay all the isms. Do you plan coming to the DMV area for any convention? There's nothing planned right now that I know of. Probably not going to get invited to any conventions, if you mean like the standard national conventions. Original Tawheed, you have shattered bootlicker hoardingness with the truth. Allah Akbar, now they are all crying crocodile tears, but their bankrupt emotional responses only support the evidence you presented. May Allah keep you steadfast. Barakallahu feek. Thanks for your super chat, brother. Appreciate it. There was another one. Melvin says, may Allah purify the ummah of these fitna-mongering, bootlicking, madkhali innovators. Ameen. Wario says, may Allah bless you, brother. Jazakallah khair. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's look at this.
And I would have to argue.
Okay. Hopefully everyone can hear this.
Has given us a dystopian fantasy of exceptional paranoia, painting an imaginary world with virtually no connection to reality, ignoring all of our humanity. If there was a God, we wouldn't have to worship it. No being worthy of worship would ever want to be worshipped. The question is, which is better for society, atheism or Islam? And the question should be whether we should make believe in any religion, but we're just going to pretend that those other religions don't exist. I know a lot of pastors in Texas would want to debate me on whether atheism is better than Christianity, again, ignoring all the other religions because they think there's a special. And like many natural-born Texans, which I believe Mr. Hakagachu is, he is politically confused. I've seen him say that the political left and right are both wings of the same cancer, as if it's possible for a society to exist without any politics at all, and no human...
See, this is... When he said this, my ears perked up, and you can actually see on the video, like, I'm confused, like this confused look on my face. Like, he's saying that left and right are part of the same cancer. Yeah, the cancer of political, philosophical liberalism, this overall system. So he's familiar with what I've said about this, but the conclusion that he took is that, there's no use for politics, basically. So what? Like, that's not the point, you fool.
Collective is, any human collective is necessarily going to have politics. The larger the group, the greater the need for it. To agree on how to protect everyone's interests fairly, to cohabitate productively, there has to be some expectation of conduct leading to an adherence of customs, norms, and ultimately laws. That requires politics.
He thinks that I think that politics are not necessary because I said that right and left are part of the same cancer. That means that politics are not necessary. And then he's like spending time trying to establish that, yeah, you need to have politics. You have to have shared norms, right? So he doesn't even understand like the basic point.
In any collective, there will be those who advocate sharing resources to take care of everyone as contrasted with the others who are only interested in their own ambitions versus right. But the more important issue, especially in this debate, is the other axis perpendicular to that between authoritarian and libertarian. That oft-ignored axis is the one that matters most here, where whichever end you're on either allows you to do as you will or commands you to do as you're told. Hakigatsu and I would have to argue from opposite ends of that scale because he is advocating for the imposition of a faith-based belief system with required beliefs and prohibited beliefs, whereas I am arguing for free thought. The word atheism simply means without theism, without a God belief. Put another way, it is simply not being fooled into believing unsupported assertions of impossible nonsense for no good reason. It's not a religion itself, nor even a belief, so much as a lack of either. I understand that some proponents of communism have tried to suppress or eliminate religion, but we also know that when Joseph Stalin tried that a century ago, he saw that it didn't work. So he switched tactics and employed the Russian Orthodox Church to promote communism for him through their community outreach. You can't demand that everyone be entirely rational, and to promote communism the way they did wasn't rational anyway. It was evil because it was authoritarian, the worst type of society that is, and that is exactly what Mr. Hakigatsu is arguing for. Because he's not offering the freedom to believe in Islam if you like. You already have that right. Instead, he wants to impose it upon you so that you have to believe that, so that you have to declare faith, and you have to talk to yourself 5 times a day, pretending as if God can hear you. And you have to do that in full prostration where everyone can see you, because Islam is the religion George Orwell warned us about. Religion always was the imposition of authoritarianism that the Soviet Union once tried to be. But as the famous atheist Carl Sagan pointed out, arguments from authority are worthless. He also said that the suppression of uncomfortable ideas may be common in religion or in politics, but it's not the path to knowledge, and there's no place for it in the endeavor of science. So what we would call an atheist society is one that is largely or predominantly not religious. That only means that we have...
So far, what he's said that has substance is that, okay, if authoritarianism is bad, and whatever society or whatever system has more authoritarian aspects to it is worse for society. Like, that's what we're gathering, what I'm gathering from his statements. And then he's just, listening off the standard talking points from atheists, like, oh, it's just a myth, blah, blah, blah. Religion is just nonsense, blah, blah, blah.
Secularism, where social activities as well as legislation are not based on religion. I've often said that if you cite religion as your sole justification for any action or policy, then you still haven't given a reason for it. You need something more than faith. You need a real explanation. So what makes a good society? Most explanations I've seen yet list what we would call left-wing policies, and I think they're correct, but let's be objective, staying out of politics for a moment to deal with this particular question. Let's look at something more mainstream. Forbes magazine has a list of the top 10 best societies in the world, starting with Germany, Netherlands, UK, France, Japan, Australia, Canada, and South Korea. Contrary to what you may have heard from some self-deluded patriots out there, the USA is not number 1. We haven't been for a long time, not since the encroachment of the religious right, which Barry Goldwater warned us about some 60 years ago. We have since fallen from the pinnacle position, but we're still at least in the top 10, if only just barely. We're number 9, just above Taiwan, which, like the US, also has laws and policies to protect freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, as well as freedom of expression, assembly, and association, something Islamic countries do not have. The U.S. is just below South Korea. Their government maintains a better legal separation of church and state than we have, thanks to the impeachable justices making the majority of our now extreme, no longer Supreme Court. But otherwise, they're like us in that despite that secular divide, South Korean politicians may personally advocate or endorse Christianity just like our politicians blindly do. Likewise, Australians may be irritated by a few religious legislators in their government, but the populace is protected by Section 116 of their Constitution, which keeps church and state separate. Because every time religion has ever had rule over law, the result has been a violation of human rights. The way to ruin any society is to make it theocratic. Every one of the top 10 best societies in the world is considered secular. Even Germany, inasmuch as it is not founded on a specific religious ideology of its own, and also because it does not identify as a particular religion to the exclusion of all others. The UK may have integrated church with state at its founding, but British society has since become one of the most secularized in the world, where irreligion is prevalent, meaning that atheists account for a significant portion of the population, if not the majority, compared to devout practice of any other faith. France, too, once a very religious country until the Revolution, France now declares itself to be an indivisible, secular, democratic, and social republic, guaranteeing that all citizens, regardless of their origin, race, or religion, are treated as equals before the law and respecting of all religious beliefs. All good things, but I've seen interviews where Mr. Hashgachu has objected to all of that. But, as Forbes put it, of all factors that make a society great, two stand out: economic opportunity and quality of life, both of which require freedom, equality, and secularism, all of which my opponent is against. He is against everything that makes a society good. If society is defined as an aggregate of people living together in a more or less ordered community, then we don't have to rely on Forbes. We could look at another list of the top 10 best countries to live in, because they're all looking at economic opportunity and quality of life in addition to national health care and other benefits of those societies. Since there is no final authority on which ones are best, I found 10 different lists from different sources, each claiming to be the top 10 best countries in the world to live in for 2022. And I'll share the links to all of them when I have the opportunity to do so. I compared all 10 lists to make sure they were different countries or in a different order, to make sure that it wasn't just the same list being repeated. And I then made my own top 10 from them, from the ones that come up again and again. For example, Switzerland, Sweden, and Canada appeared on 9 of the 10 lists, followed by Germany, Australia, and Denmark with 8 out of 10. Norway was on 7 of 10. Then 5 countries tied for the last 3 slots with 4 out of 10. They are Finland, Japan, New Zealand, the UK, and USA. So I'm not even sure if my own country is in the top 10 anymore. If any of these lists that I saw continued beyond the top 10, then you might see especially rich countries like the United Arab Emirates or Bahrain show up somewhere down someone's list, but not one Muslim country ever made it to anyone's top 10. Every nation in the compiled top 10 is a secular society, and so was every country in each of the lists that I compiled to get the top 10, with one exception. While some of these sources were travel bureaus or financial centers or universities, one of them was just some guy's YouTube travel channel wherein he said that Singapore was quite a nice place, or would be, except for the fact that it is oppressively authoritarian. Authoritarianism means the enforcement or advocacy of strict obedience to authority at the expense of personal freedom. That nightmarish description is exactly what Hashgachu wants. He is actually arguing that a better society is one where the people are neither equal nor free, but who are instead subjugated to the despotic dictate and treated with prejudicial bias, just like prisoners or serfs in medieval times, or like slaves, because some Muslim countries still have slavery. Authoritarian regimes, such as every theocracy ever, are bad for society almost by default. To prove that, let's also look at the list for the worst countries to live in, with the worst reputations, the most dangerous, and the lowest quality of life, or the least human rights. Muslim majority or Sharia countries show up all over those lists. There are only 3 secular countries that show up on any of them. Venezuela is technically secular because it doesn't have a state religion, but at the same time, practically everyone is Catholic, and you'll be treated as some kind of freak if you admit to being atheist. Russia is on the list of countries with the worst reputations, obviously, and Ukraine is on the list for the most dangerous, but that's only because it's 2022 and they're at war with Russia. Otherwise, now let's look at Muslim majority countries on all these lists. Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Algeria, and Kazakhstan are all in the top 10 countries with the worst reputation. Niger, Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone, and Eritrea are all in the top 10 worst countries to live in. Iran, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Algeria, Libya, Nigeria, and Syria are on the top 10 worst places to live. Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Somalia, and Sudan are all in the top 10 most dangerous countries to live in, while Pakistan, Bangladesh, Lebanon, and Mali are in the top 10 most dangerous countries to visit. Then Afghanistan, Chad, Niger, Guinea, Yemen, Sierra Leone, and Liberia are all in the top 10 countries with the worst quality of life. So we've seen that the best countries are secular, all of them, and largely atheist, while the worst countries are religious, and the worst among them are Muslim. proving, I think conclusively, that atheism has the most positive effect on society, while religion in general is always bad, and Islam in particular is the worst thing for society.
Thank you very much for that opening, Aron. We're going to go into the 5.
All right, so clearly a moronic argument. This guy thinks that he's going to prove that atheism is best for society by looking up a bunch of lists online. Like he Googled what are the best societies to live in, and then he took those lists and see, Muslim countries on these lists. QED, checkmate, God freaks. It's unimaginably stupid to argue in this way, like on the authority of some lists that you literally Googled. And I point that out in different ways, as we'll get into, inshallah. But I want to point out, look at how many values he is constantly appealing to. The value of freedom of thought, freedom of association, secularism. He's the idea that authoritarianism is bad. Like all of these kinds of values that he's bringing to the table, right? He's the one who's propounding these liberal values, liberal secularism. So it can't be said that I was projecting onto him, or I was, why didn't you argue on the basis of atheism? Because as we'll see, or in the comments on the debate, all of these atheists were basically groaning and whining about, why is Daniel arguing about liberalism? This is about atheism. Atheism means just not a belief. We don't have belief in God. That's all that atheism means. That's what they constantly say. But no, your boy here, Aron, the 70-year-old with a purple beard, is advocating and speaking the virtues of liberalism and freedom and democracy. That's your religion. Those are your values. That's a substance that atheists hold. Beliefs and values that atheists hold. So can't we look at the results of that system and the consequences of that system and where that system is leading? You want to pin all of this garbage, every bad thing that happens in the Muslim world is because of Islam. Islam is the reason why these countries have poor economic outcomes. Islam is the reason why, whatever. Every negative thing. But when it comes to atheism, we can't pin anything on atheism. We can't say, look at these secular countries and look at how marriage is disappearing, how 40% or more of men in society are incels, they're involuntarily celibate in these secular, advanced, developed societies. How, there's destruction of family, destruction of community, soaring depression rates, soaring suicide rates, soaring drug abuse rates. We can't pin that on atheism. Why not? These are the things that are happening in your secular utopia, these amazing societies that you listed off. All these countries have these problems. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. We can't pin that on atheism. So this is why atheists are just a joke. It's a joke to argue with them. That is the best that they can come up with as a response, as we'll see from Aron, is that, but atheism is just lack of belief. They just have this one line. It's like a get out of jail free card. Nope. Nothing that bad that happens in these countries run by atheism is the fault of atheism.
Minute rebuttals. I have the clock set for you. Thanks very much, Daniel. The floor is all yours.
So there's a lot of material there to respond to. Thank you, Aron, for that opening. First of all, I think you have a completely false understanding of history of liberalism. Liberalism has always been authoritarian. It has always imposed itself on people in an authoritarian, genocidal fashion. We can look at the spread of liberalism in Europe, continental Europe, by Napoleon. who was spreading liberalism, basically spreading the consequences of the French Revolution in the end of the 19th century or beginning of the 19th century forward throughout Europe. 7 million Europeans killed because they were opposed to Napoleon's new social reform and the imposition of these values of freedom, equality, and so forth.
Look at Daniel, if you're able to just move your mic just a little bit higher. Sorry about that. For some reason, it's gone down just a bit.
Or look at when it comes to the history of colonialism in the Muslim world and elsewhere. Look at the history of the United States. Look at the bloody history of American expansionism and manifest destiny. How many millions of Native Americans murdered, genocided, for what reason? For the spread of this project of freedom and liberty and equality, the pursuit of happiness. Look at the policies within colonial Muslim world in the subcontinent, within North Africa, and literally there is no freedom of expression in these colonial territories. Why? Because the colonial powers declare a state of emergency, and they say that no, we can't have the Muslims speaking out against the French power or the British power because that could cause rebellion. Therefore, if you insult the French colonizer, you insult the British colonial power, then you can be sentenced to death. You can even be killed on the spot. This is the actual history of liberalism, not the kind of hoax that you are propagating. Liberalism has been always authoritarian in this way, and we're experiencing it now. Now we're experiencing the kind of authoritarian policies from an executive power. Actually, I'm not trying to bash Biden. Trump was doing the same thing, where people's movement is restricted. People cannot go from place to place, country to country, unless they meet certain standards set by the liberal powers. You cannot move freely unless you have a passport that checks off, okay, have you had these tests done, have you had these vaccinations, and so forth. The amount of imposition.
Sorry about that. A little extra. For some reason, that mic's not working well.
All right. So, I mean, we can talk more about that, how liberalism has been the most authoritarian force of the past 250 years. The other point that you really emphasized was that whenever we look at top 10 lists of best places to live, they all happen to be secular countries. Well, obviously, if you have a liberal standard for what counts as the best place to live, then yeah, liberal countries, secular countries are going to come out on top. That's a tautology. That's a circular type of argument. Let's look at the countries that are going to preserve marriage, the countries that are going to preserve family, the countries that are going to ensure that you can live a happy, fulfilled human life. What are the countries that come out on top with those standards? And they're not going to be liberal or secular countries, because all kinds of stats that we can talk about, how the marriage rate is collapsing, fertility rates are collapsing, people are alienated from their families. Every day or every week there's a story in one of these online outlets that talk about 70-year-olds who are working jobs at McDonald's because they can't retire, they have no safety net from family. In the Muslim world, you never see a 70-year-old who has to work at McDonald's. Why? Because he or she has a loving family that can support him or her. In the secular world, in the West, also in certain East Asian countries like Japan, people are literally dying by themselves in their apartments because they have no family checking up on them. They go months at a time without anyone discovering them until the stench of their rotting corpse wafts into their apartment building hallways. And it's such a prevalent problem that there are even companies that are dedicated just to this issue of cleaning out rotten corpses from apartments. And it's something that is so common, even in my extended family, this has happened. Like someone has died and no one knew about it because, well, the family is pretty secular and no one is checking up. And that's the state, that's the dystopian state that people have to look forward to in their twilight years. That's what liberalism, that's what secularism has to offer. So yeah, is that
actually? I'll give you an extra 30 seconds just because of that audio blunder on my part. Go ahead. Another 30 seconds.
Yeah, so that's basically what I want to respond to, is that we have to define what makes life valuable. And you're saying that freedom, equality, liberty, these are values. I never said that those are bad values. I just think that there's a balance that is needed. You need a balance between liberty and equality, these freedom of choice, autonomy. I never said that those should be rejected out of hand. Those are good things. They just need to values that all human beings universally find valuable: marriage, family, community, so forth.
That time, we'll kick it over to Aron.
Yeah, as I said before, like many natural-born Texans, Mr. Hakagachi is politically confused. He conflates liberals with leftists, which I see common and left. He also conflates the right wing with liberals, citing the evils of American expansion and other things that could not possibly be blamed on liberalism. I don't think he understands.
Like, this guy, he doesn't understand basic history. Like, he's completely uninformed of history. He doesn't recognize that the US government is, from its inception, a liberal government. The whole idea of freedom of choice, freedom of thought. Like, have you heard of the Declaration of Independence? Have you heard of the Constitution? That's not liberalism. So this is the problem, actually. Let me make a point about atheists and these kind of atheist spokespeople on YouTube that have hundreds of thousands of followers, like Aron, Matt Dillahunty, T Jump, or whatever. Like, they are extremely uneducated, literally uneducated. Some of them are high school dropouts. They have no like college education or college degree. And it shows. Like, they're not making up for it because they're just amazing readers on their own, like doing independent study. No, they're just uninformed about basic history, like any kind of world policy, any kind of political events that are happening. Like, the way that Aron Ra talks in this debate is like his only source of information is MSNBC. Like, his only understanding of the world is like Huffington Post. And he's not aware of anything. Like, this is not like a left-right issue. Like, you're just historically, politically, philosophically uninformed. And I'm not trying to like big league him or whatever and say, oh, I'm educated, but you're not. But it matters when like we're talking about such a huge topic about what's best for society. You have to have an understanding of history. You have to have some basic level of understanding of like, okay, what is the United States or European empire based on? Like, what is the foundational ideology of these nations? You keep saying secular, secular, secular. You're anti-authoritarian. What do you think all of these American and European politicians from their inception were advocating? And all he can say is that he can only see the world through this left-right dichotomy. Like, oh, they were right-wing. If you kill someone, you're right-wing. If you like are pro-war, you're right-wing. Which something is, even in recent history, like even in the past 10 years, even in the past year, has been like the most rabid pro-war people in the US government right now are on the left. They're the ones who are signing billions and billions of dollars to buy weapons for Ukraine. Like, these are leftists. So even the most recent history should dispel this idea that, oh, if you're pro-war, that means you're pro-authoritarian, that means you're right-wing. Like, this is like a middle school, boy's understanding of the world. Someone whose only understanding is based on Huffington Post or Rachel Maddow.
Understands what a political compass looks like. If you look toward the middle, that's where the liberal is. He blames left-leaning liberals for what the conservative right did, including the war on terror and the attempted Muslim ban and
so many left-wing were in favor of the war on terror, are in favor of the war on terror, are every year renewing the Patriot Act. These are left-wing that are in favor of war, global war on terror.
profiling of immigrants, all of which were led by Republican neocons on the conservative right, where he is politically. He blames liberals for that, even though liberals were in fact defending the rights of Muslims and other immigrants and those of other faiths under the First Amendment, to which Hakegachu is opposed, like Christian conservatives are too. Which I think is funny, that atheists and other secularists are the best defenders of religious freedom, but devout religious believers don't want anyone to have such freedoms. Contrary to the Constitution, religious right conservatives want to establish theirs as the state religion, and they want to prohibit the free exercise of any other faith, because the religious right of any religion don't want democratic republic, such as we enjoy in this country. Instead, they want a government. They don't want a government of we the people. They want to impose their make-believe onto everyone else.
Yeah, Daniel. In Europe, people don't vote. They're forced by liberalism. So I assume this is a sarcastic remark, but I mean, this is like, you think that if people have the option to vote, then that makes it a non-authoritarian society. You do realize that in some of these most authoritarian countries, like North Korea, people are allowed to vote. People in some of these Middle Eastern countries, people are allowed to vote. They have options. They can vote for their leaders. They can vote for their policies. But who gets to decide who is on the ballot, for example? I mean, this is the whole point of this debate. Like, it just went from a debate about atheism versus Islam to Islam versus liberalism. And that's really what all of these debates end up boiling down to, because that's atheists, Christians today, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus. It's all just different flavors of liberalism against Islam. And that's why the debates always boil down to this kind of argumentation. But to think that, oh, people vote, therefore it's like there's no authoritarianism because they're allowed to vote. The ability to vote actually is something that is found in these authoritarian societies in order to give the impression that there is this kind of political freedom. You have, you can choose your future. You can choose what happens to society by voting. Really? Because people quickly find out, no matter who I vote for, Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, every year things get worse. Every year things get worse and worse for me. It's like it has no effect. So, I mean, that's just one point.
Along with what they call values, which is really just bigotry. And bigotry is an obstinate or unreasonable attachment to a belief, opinion, or faction, in particular prejudice against a person or people based on the basis of their membership to a particular group. We've already seen Christian nationalists announcing that they don't want atheists or Muslims in this country. And those are all right-wingers. There are no liberals in that group. Likewise, remember that Hakegachu is not debating whether theism is better for society, but only his brand of theism, Islam, such that if he had political weight in this country, then Mormons and Hindus and even Baptists would be turning to me to ask what we can do to defend religious freedom, because that's just one of the freedoms he doesn't want you to have.
No, if Muslims were in charge, the Christians, the Mormons, the Hindus, the Jews, they would say, wow, this is way better than when atheists were in charge. Wow, my child is not, questioning his gender, and my wife is not about to leave me, and my wife is not cheating on me. First of all, I can get married. I'm able to have a spouse because there are laws that prevent, in Islam, laws that prevent women completely destroying marriage. There are values and ethics within Islam that prevent this kind of rise in divorce, rise in the destruction of marriage that we see in Western societies. Islam says be faithful. Islam says don't have sex outside of marriage. Islam values modesty. Islam values chastity. These things would be established in society, and everyone will benefit from that. Everyone benefits, including non-Muslims. Christians will be begging for Sharia. And actually, we do see that. We see Christians online. You can find them. that will say, I wish that we were ruled by Sharia. We need Sharia. It's way better than this atheist secular system that is destroying everything, that is destroying humanity.
I've heard other Christians in this state say that they feel oppressed by not being able to oppress other people by imposing their religious beliefs onto everyone else, along with their personal perversion of morality, the way Hakugachi wants to do. This is why I appreciate that he has a Texas accent, that he's a natural American citizen, because it means the only difference between his bigotry and that of the religious right conservative Christians is that when he says the exact same arguments they do, it's coming from a Muslim. Because that makes him an example that I can show to Christians to illustrate what their bigotry sounds like to everyone else. So my religious family will hear his arguments, the same arguments they themselves make, but if it comes from him, they'll reject it and agree with me. Typical.
Your Christian family, Aron, loves my arguments, I bet, if they knew them. They would love my arguments and they'd completely support the kinds of things I'm saying. And, I'll have a live stream with them. Aron Ra's family with Daniel. We'll have a good old time. We'll have a grand old Texas time. Let's see if they reject Daniel, Aron. No, they only reject your Satanist, uneducated, atheist self.
Right-wing Christians will often argue that the patriarchy doesn't even exist anymore. There's no need for feminism now that women have equal rights in this country, until they hear Hakugachi saying that no, they don't, and no, they shouldn't even have it. Because the Christian bigotry is that, of course, Muslims oppress and subjugate their women, and here he is to prove it. And then finding that they have a common enemy with him, with me rather, the Christian right will start sounding like me, saying that unfair double standards should not be arbitrarily imposed on the basis of gender. It's like when Christians support public funding of faith-based schools and then some Muslim school tries to claim that money. Then Christian legislatures suddenly remember the value of secularism, something he doesn't value at all. And if what he's selling...
Yeah, those are usually Christian Zionists. They're not Christian, they're Judeo-Christian. They're operating on the basis of the Israeli lobby.
Telling you doesn't make any sense to you, that you better be glad that he doesn't wield any power, because he said that he wants to criminalize heresy, blasphemy, and apostasy, punishing the latter with execution, because he doesn't understand that the death penalty was never a deterrent to violent crime, but that's a debate for another time, like the absurdity of religious history and theology, why hell doesn't exist, and so on. For now, let me remind you that in this country, blasphemy is not a crime, it's a right. And if you don't use it, you'll lose it to people like him.
Thank you very much for that rebuttal, Aron. We will kick it into open dialogue. So this is about 40 minutes, followed by Q&A. Thank you very much, gentlemen. The floor is all yours.
So your rebuttal didn't really address my opening statement.
You didn't...
You just read your opening, your response to me, so that means you didn't actually engage with what I said in my opening. That's fine. We'll talk about. Yeah, okay.
You came up with a matrix fantasy. You had something that's not even attached to reality.
That's fine. So I want to.
This is typical in debates, in the debates I've had. Like, they just don't anticipate the opening statement and they can't engage with it because they, lack intelligence. I don't know. Like, how are you a debater? Like, the whole point of debate is you hear an argument and then on the spot, you have to think of a response. On the spot to what you've just heard, you have to evaluate that on the basis of your own principles and values and position and rebut that and show how what the other side has said does not prove the point that Islam is better for society versus atheism. That's what makes a debate interesting, is that engagement and the ability to think on the spot and give a good response on the spot. Now, if you in advance have prepared a rebuttal, that means you're not really, there's two possibilities. Like, you've prepared the rebuttal in advance. Either you have perfectly anticipated what the opponent is going to say in his opening, because the opponent is so predictable and the opponent is so, it's so clear that he's not going to bring any kind of new argument other than what he's rehashed a million times. Or you have not anticipated the opponent and then you fall flat because you're responding to nothing. Like, you're responding to a straw man, you're responding to someone else. You're not responding to me and what I've brought to the table in this debate. So he falls into that latter category. He was just reading his rebuttal. So he must have thought that. I think that's how he went into this debate. He thinks that all theists, they have just one argument, and that's it. And he's seen it all. He's seen it all. In actuality, atheists only have one argument. These atheists, like Aron, they have literally one argument for establishing atheism. Where are the scientific studies? There's no peer-reviewed study that proves God, so the religion is false. It's a myth. Like, that's atheism. That's the only argument that they have. Or they say, look at all these problems in religious societies, or religious people are intolerant. That's a problem. That's all the argument that they have. And then when you flip the table on that, or flip the tables and say, what about all these problems in atheistic societies? Look at all the totalitarian force of the liberal powers, atheistic powers throughout history, since the French Revolution and the reign of terror of the atheists, the reign of terror of the communists, the reign of terror of the eugenics program from Darwinists, atheists. That's not atheism. No, that has nothing to do with atheism. Like, this is their level of argumentation. It's a joke. Like, this is a waste of time.
I don't know, as you listed all of these countries that are the best places to live, they're ranked top 10, whatever. All of those countries, they tend to be Northwestern European white countries. Do you think there's some kind of racial bias in that?
South Korea and what was it? Japan, and there was another East Asian country in there, and I can't remember which one it was. Was it South Vietnam? Taiwan.
I didn't say all of them were European.
Yeah,
but the majority are. Is there a bias?
There was an imbalance.
Do you think that's racist?
I don't know. I don't know.
So it could possibly be racist. Okay.
As I said, I went through a collection of different things, and they're also, all of the lists are saying that they're ordering by different criteria. I don't know what everybody's criteria is in every case. I thought that the best way to do that would be to take a collection of lists and see who fares on everybody's list.
But shouldn't it make us wonder that all of the best places to live happen to be white?
Look at his face. Look at that face. Oh man, he wasn't expecting that. So, I mean, the first point completely, like before the racism point, the point that he admitted, I don't know the criteria that was used to make this list. These lists about the best places to live. I don't know the criteria. So that's a huge admission. That basically says the list that you produce by compiling all these different lists that you Googled is trash because you don't know what the criteria are. So, and then the racism point, like, he's just completely baffled.
I don't know, again, what the criteria, what everyone's criteria is.
You don't need to know the criteria. You can look at the results.
I think it would be strange to say that a group of lists that include Asian countries are necessarily racist.
Do they? There are no African countries.
If I'm doing a collection of different lists, and these are the criteria that they're listing is for economic opportunity or what have you, for all of these different things. While I looked and said, these European countries show up an awful lot here. Either Europe is the best place to live, or every one of these people are lying and they're racist.
So white countries are the best places to live.
I said Europe, right? We're playing risk now, and so we're going to pick a continent.
But they're white. These European countries are white.
Yes.
There are no African countries on the list. There were no South American countries on the list.
Yeah, and we understand.
We don't need to know the criteria. Like, if we can see a predominantly white group of CEOs, they're all white. There is not a single African or a single woman or a single whatever on that group. Wouldn't you say that that is not representative of the human race?
I recognize that there's a possibility there, but it seems extreme to think
You
that
recognize
all of these different people
possibility that's
who are
a
citing
racist.
different criteria are all actually racist, and that the reason that the criteria that they're citing don't actually apply. I think it's a little bit paranoid to say that every one of these lists are racist, that all of these people compiling these lists
Well,
are
they're
racist.
certainly not representative of the human race. The thing
And
is
as I
that
said, when the list
your
continues-
criticism of Islam, doesn't really, you're saying all these Muslim countries rank at the bottom, but there are plenty of African countries that are not Muslim, Latin American countries, Eastern European countries, East Asian countries that also rank very low. They're also, many of them are secular. Some of them have a lot of atheism actually because of the history of communism in Asia, for example, and they rank very low. It's not because of Islam or even theism. It's just, other factors like colonialism and the domination and authoritarianism of liberalism from Northwestern Europe, from the United States,
So
that
when
is
we-
causing that. Not because Islam is just inherently backwards.
So this is, if you remember the Harris Sultan debate, or you remember the APUS debate, like they all falter on this point. Like they all trip up because they can't deal with this fact. Like, why is it that all of the high, you want to attribute the high GDP, the economic prosperity and the quality of life, you want to attribute that to secularism. And you want to say this is proof that secularism is better for society. But guess what? There are all these countries throughout the world, Africa, South America, Eastern Europe, Southern Europe now increasingly, East Asia, Central Asia, that are economically depressed while being very secular, very atheistic, sometimes having higher levels of atheism than Northwest Europe and America. So how do you explain this discrepancy? None of them can do it. APUS couldn't do it. Harris Sultan couldn't do it. Like Harris Sultan, they all have like this dumb look on their face, like they've never thought about this point for a second. Harris Sultan, I want to point out that all of the Nobel Prizes, like which Muslims have won Nobel Prizes, which Muslim countries are producing Nobel Prize winners. This shows how backwards Islam is. And then you point out that, well, where are the African Nobel Prize winners? Where are the Mexican Nobel Prize winners? Where are the Brazilian Nobel Prize winners? Where are the Chinese Nobel Prize winners? Surprisingly, China doesn't really have many Nobel Prizes, despite being such a high proportion of the human population. So explain that. Explain why that's the case. They can't explain why that's the case. They can't, because then they'll have to acknowledge these other factors. They have to acknowledge that secularism has been imposed on the rest of the world by a brutal colonial imperial force. They won't be able to acknowledge that because that destroys their entire argument. So he has to stutter and look like an idiot.
Once again, there's no way of knowing whether every one of these lists is racist, but I would say that it's suspicious. Yes, there's a disparity that Europe is favored. Is it favored because all of these different people compiling these lists for these different reasons are all secretly lying and they're racist? No, I think that's a bit ridiculous.
So we could say based on...
Like, my point is not that the people who made the lists were racists. That's not the point, you fool. The point is that why are these countries actually have these higher economic indicators? Why do they have higher GDP per capita? Why do they have this kind of economic dominance? Why is that? That's what why I'm wondering. That's what you need to explain.
Your list, that Black and Hispanic societies are inferior.
No.
That's the list. Your list didn't have any Hispanic countries. It didn't have any Black countries.
I think it actually did. But
Which one?
I'd have to go back over the whole thing. But it wouldn't matter because one of the problems that we have when we're having these discussions, we have to have some common metric, we have to have some common fact. And I find that when I'm discussing politics, especially with somebody, there's not even a common fact. There's like nothing that anybody agrees on, whether the election was stolen or whether it wasn't, whatever. We don't have any common thing that we can build on. And that's the difficulty I'm having with you. What you call good is bad. And what you
Racism is bad.
What
you agree?
Does what you describe in your previous interview that I watched,
just can't
what you're
say
describing as a utopia is my
fully-
dystopia, and apparently the opposite applies.
This is like,
So if I offer freedom of religion, which atheists unilaterally support, because we believe in free thought, that you have the right. It's one of the most basic, fundamental rights, is the right to think and believe or not what you do for whatever reason makes sense to you. No religion likes that. They all want to control thought right inside your head, and Islam is among the worst of them. You have laws in certain countries, in certain Sharia countries. If you're Arab, for example, you are legally obliged in the UAE that you have to believe Islam. You can't have free thought.
So this is just gish galloping. Like, he just wants to get away from the point that I made, and he starts talking about like like the laws of different countries.
If you have free thought there, that's criminal.
no, this is like a
Free thought
caricature.
is criminal.
It's not that's a fact.
Okay, so all governments restrict certain forms of speech and certain forms of
But
investigation.
we're talking about thought and belief.
Even thought, you can't express certain thoughts, you can't express
Religion
certain ideas.
inhibits-
Every country, every society restricts thought. Read Stanley
No,
Fish.
there's not-
Okay,
there's
let
not
me
a-
finish.
there's
I let
not-
you speak. I let you speak. Let me finish my point. Read Stanley Fish, philosopher, eminent philosopher, his book, There Is No Such Thing as Free Speech, and it's a good thing too. Every society has to regulate expression and thought in order to preserve that community. So even if you go on social media and Facebook, they have what? Community guidelines. If you violate those community guidelines, you will get banned, you will get punished. Why? Because you are disturbing the fabric of the community. That's the logic of it. That justifies you being banned. Presumably, you don't have a problem with that kind of banning, or you don't have a problem with the fact that you can't go around and shout the N-word at everyone that you see. Presumably, that kind of speech should be restricted. Or are you an absolute free speeches, in favor of absolute free speech, and even that kind of expression should be allowed in society?
Do you accept that there is a law in the UAE, a Sharia
Can't-
country,
you can't answer
that if you're Arab, you were legally required to believe in Islam?
No, you're not. There is no such law in the UAE. You can be a Christian in the UAE. You can be a Jew in the UAE.
But
You
as
can
an
be
Arab.
Buddhist.
So you notice how he asked the question and I answered it. Like, I directly answered the question. Whenever I ask him a question, like, is racism bad? All he can do is like change the subject. So this is a typical atheistic tactic. They cannot answer direct questions. It's because they feel like they're in control in all of these debates with theists, and in a sense, they are in control when they play the part of the prosecutor, and the religious person is the defendant. The defendant who has to just defend his beliefs, defend Christianity, defend Islam, and the atheist is there as prosecutor, interrogating or interrogator. I ask the questions, you answer. That is the role that the atheists are used to playing. But if you ask the right kind of questions like this, that cut to the heart of liberalism, then they don't know what to do. Like, they are just dumbfounded, as you can see with Aron, and they have to just change the subject. They have to get back into the role of interrogator, but he does it so poorly. Like, he's just fundamentally uneducated on Islam, and he has to keep appealing to the UAE and his friends. Like, isn't it true that in the UAE you have to believe in Islam if you're an Arab? Like, that. Talk about Islam, like, and this is why I was confused in parts of this, because like, why is he focusing on one particular country? Like, this is a debate about Islam, not UAE or Saudi or Qatar or whatever. Talk about Islamic law, the Sharia. Talk about Islamic policy. Like, typically an atheist or these Christian apologists, they have a basic understanding of Islamic law. Like someone like David Wood. David Wood has a very broad understanding of some of these Islamic ideas and Islamic values and what the Sharia says. He has an understanding because he's a critic, a kind of stupid critic, but a critic nonetheless of Islam. So he knows these kinds of points about Islam. But Aron Ra has no idea. Like, he hasn't done his homework. That's why he has to keep talking about like his experiences with his friends in the UAE.
They have lots of Buddhists.
But as an Arab
In,
in the UAE.
are you talking about the apostasy law?
No.
I just don't know what he's talking about.
You
See,
can be Christian and live in a Muslim country.
I was in the UAE, and I'm having a conversation with a group of Arabs who all tell me that they have this law, that if you're Arab, you have to believe in Islam. That we can be, we can be Christian or whatever if we're foreigners.
There
We can
are
have
Arab Christians, though. They have long generations of Arabs who are Christians,
Okay,
Arabs who are
so-
Jews.
So what you're saying is that all my hosts,
I don't know who you're talking
right,
about.
is all my hosts, including a cop, are all lying to me. And all of them, all
I'm
of my
just stating-
lists,
I'm
all of
stating
the different
a
independent
fact.
lists that I gathered, they're all racist.
Well, you
And you're saying
acknowledge
that every society controls thought, legislatively.
What about Coptic Christians? Have you heard of Coptic
And you
Christians?
somehow conflated that to free speech. Whereas I was talking about free thought and belief, and you're saying that every society has legislation to control thought. Now, apart from the example I gave, which you denied, give me an example of a nation that controls thought.
So, which Muslim country can actually scan your mind to determine what thoughts you have?
I'm sorry, I forgot. I was asking the
tell-
guy who
explain
thinks
it.
we're headed for the Matrix.
Explain it. Which society can scan your thoughts to control what thoughts that you have? Thoughts are expressed through speech. It's the same. There's no distinction between free thought and free speech.
Yes.
And you can go straight to the heart of the Muslim world and have all kinds of blasphemous, satanic thoughts. No one can do anything about it because it's in your head.
But okay, so
There's no distinction between free thought and free speech.
But
So
you're
again,
not, so
this
what you're
issue
saying
of
is you're not allowed to
racism,
express this at all.
that's free speech, yes. Every
At all.
society restricts free speech.
Okay,
In
so you
some
have a
form or
restriction on
fashion.
free speech, so that you can't give your opinion on anything. You can't say.
You can give your opinion on plenty of things
So
in the
you're
Muslim
saying
world.
in Dubai that I can legally say, here's the reasons why Quran is wrong.
No, you can't. The speech,
I can?
no, you cannot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I acknowledge that.
So
that's
my
that's
host
the
who was
kind of
lying to
restriction.
me had to rush me out of a restaurant for saying that very sentence.
Like here, like this idea that there's a distinction between free thought and free speech. When people want to justify this value of free thought, they appeal to the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. This is like the standard legal document that establishes free thought is the First Amendment. So let's look at what the First Amendment actually says. So if you can read that, let me make it better. First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Notice how nowhere in the First Amendment is free thought mentioned. Nowhere is it mentioned, but it's assumed, it's understood that free speech, when the First Amendment says that the Congress shall make no law that abridges free speech, that is protecting free thought. So that it's the same thing. Free thought and free speech, free expression, they all mean the same thing, because to think freely, according to liberal founders of the U.S., they're liberal, Aron, their understanding is that to be able to think and evaluate all kinds of different ideas and think about how religion is false and how Satanism is true, and think about how science says to live your life like that, and whatever. All of those thoughts come to you through education, through newspaper articles, through pamphlets, through all kinds of publications of books. Like, that's all speech. That's all speech. You, as a free citizen, will read that material, and that is how you have free thought, because you can evaluate all these different ideas. There's not the government controlling what you can think, because the government can't ban books. The government can't ban certain types of research. The government can't ban certain types of investigation. And that's how people are free to think however they want, because the sources of information is not being controlled by the government. Like, this is the liberal fantasy. This is the liberal ideal. It's a fantasy because it doesn't exist anywhere. It has never existed. It can't possibly exist because speech is restricted in every society. Speech is restricted, and therefore thought is restricted. And at no point has thought and speech been more restricted than in modern times under liberal governments. Just think about the type of censorship online right now. Just think about how I have to tippy-toe and avoid talking about certain things on this very live stream. Otherwise, it's going to get banned. Is there free thought, online? And now we know that the government of the United States has been working hand in hand with big tech to determine what can and can't be said online. So, and this is only the latest example, but liberalism has a long history of what can be said and what cannot be said, what can be published and what cannot be published. What liberalism does, it gives you, it says, look, here is what you can talk about. Talk about whatever you want and vigorously debate these topics. There's so much freedom to discuss and to debate these topics. But don't you dare go outside of the boundaries. Don't you dare talk about these other issues about, history, about conspiracy theories, about what the government, what your liberal governments have been doing to the world, what kind of experiments they've been running on people, what kind of plans that they have for the population. You can't talk about that. That's conspiracy theory. Don't talk about election results. Don't talk about how certain interest groups are controlling the government. Don't talk about certain diseases and certain pharmaceuticals. Don't talk about that. That's hate speech, or it's dangerous speech, or it's disinformation, or it's misinformation, or it's sedition. There's been a long history of controlling speech in an authoritarian fashion. And in Islam, actually, you have much more freedom of speech. You can talk about all of these things that I just listed. You can talk about different, conspiracies openly. You can talk about different pharmaceuticals and the impact of certain injections on your body. You can talk about all of these things. You can talk about homosexuality, gender, race. You can talk about all these things. No, the ban hammer is not going to come. You're not going to be put in prison or fined or convicted of hate speech and lose your job and be banned from the financial system. Islam says just don't blaspheme. Don't blaspheme against Allah that Islam has on speech. So which one is really, if we want to take free speech as this absolute value, which I don't, but if we did want to take free speech as this absolute value, Islam actually is providing much more free speech and free thought than what we find in any liberal society. And that's why I try to point out in this.
Because it's illegal to say.
But he's not conversant with it. He's just so stuck on Rachel Maddow view of the world, Rachel Maddow understanding of philosophy and history, like pretty much all of these atheist bots.
That the Quran is wrong.
Yeah, that's the law. Because Muslim society is preserving Islam. It's preserving belief in God because that is something that's valuable and important.
Yeah, it's amazing how many liars live there.
Just like if you come to... No, let me finish my point. You can go to many European countries and you can say, look, I think that homosexuality is wrong. That's hate speech, and you will be prosecuted for that kind of language.
What country?
Britain, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, France.
You can be imprisoned.
France deports Muslims. Yes, you can be imprisoned. You can be kicked out of the country. Muslims are deported from France because they cite verses of the Quran in public speeches that are seen as hateful. This is something that is happening in Europe, and it's being, in Canada, the same thing. You have hate speech laws. The only reason that is not the case in the United States is because the First Amendment is more robust here. But in all of those countries, you can be imprisoned if you say, I think homosexuality is immoral.
So while I'm
They call that inciting hate.
Okay, just Because we need to have a common fact here. And so you're saying that all my hosts have in Dubai lied to me about that law. And then I find myself in a hotel room in Dubai. I'm playing Texas Hold'em, and there's a knock at the door. Everybody gets scared because they think that there's going to be police or something. And they say, oh, no, you're fine because you're a foreigner, but we're all gambling. That's illegal for us because we're Arabs.
Once again, like he has no understanding of the laws of any country. His understanding of the legal system and Islam is based on like a vacation that he had in Dubai. So here's a comment. Daniel is confusing the authoritarian strains. Daniel is confusing the authoritarianism strains that currently plague Western states with liberalism as an ideology. No, I'm not. I'm not confusing authoritarian strains that currently plague Western states. They've always plagued Western liberal states. They always have plagued. And if you don't understand this, then go on YouTube, on my channel, and watch this video here. It's called Liberalism and the Genocide of Algerian Muslims. Let me share it on the screen so you can see. Go and watch this video and look at the history of authoritarianism. Look at the history of genocide advocated by the founders of liberalism, the main liberal philosophers justifying outright genocide and authoritarian measures and economic collapse of the Muslim world. This is the history of colonialism. Go watch this history. Go see the citations. Go read the citations, you uneducated atheists. Educate yourself. Look at the dozens of citations here. Imperialism, sovereignty, and the making of international law. Colonialism, human rights, a contradiction in terms. Look at all of these citations. Read a book. That's my message to Aron Ra and you atheists. Please read a book.
We can't be doing that. And then we go to a nightclub, and there are women there, are Arab women there, who say that they can sneak out and try to blend in with the foreigners, but because they're Arab, if they're caught there, then they're going to be criminalized because they have this racist legal system where if you're Arab, you have to adhere to Islam. And you're telling me all of those people lied about that law.
So within Muslim countries that abide by Islamic law, there are certain restrictions.
Like his argument is like, you're telling me my friends are liars? Like, so dumb.
Restrictions on your speech. There are certain restrictions on your behavior. These kinds of restrictions exist in all kinds of societies. There are differences between societies based on fundamental beliefs, but it's not something particular or unique to Islam. That is the point that I'm trying to make.
So in a video that I watched of you recently, you said that you don't believe in equality.
No, I never said that. Which video did I say I don't believe in equality?
I actually have the link for it.
Show me. Which was the link, the title of the video?
You said you can't have a successful marriage if you have equality, because there has to be
absolute equality. Just like you can't have a successful business if everyone is equal in the business and there's no hierarchy between the manager and the employees and the owner and the administrators.
So and you specified the detail was that the man has to be in charge of the woman.
Yes, this is patriarchy.
It has to be a patriarchy, right?
Yeah, as has been practiced.
He's bringing up these points as if they're gotchas. Like, oh, you don't believe in equality. See, look at this crazy Muslim, this crazy Muslim. He doesn't believe in equality. He believes in patriarchy. He thinks men should have the right in a marriage to be the heads of the household. That's what he thinks. Like, these are gotchas for him. Like, yeah, your point? What's your point? Yeah, that's what I think. What's the problem with that? He can just assert these things. It's just assertion. Like, this guy does not believe in gay marriage. This guy is opposed to homosexuality. Like, it's just shock value, shock factor. And increasingly, as society, as non-Muslim society in the West, increasingly realizes how so many of these things are evil, they actually look at these, like, these tactics don't work anymore. They're like, the Muslim has a point. Men should be the heads of household according to Islam. Good point. That's like increasingly the response online. And these atheists haven't adapted. These atheists are still living like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, when there was this delusion still about how amazing liberalism is. That's the thing. Like, liberalism is good until you realize that, oh, wow, I'm by myself. I can't get married. There's no chance for me to have a successful marriage. Even if I do get married, it's constantly on threat of being broken up, because my wife can divorce me at any time, no fault divorce, or she can be cheating on me. I can't do anything. I have no recourse. And my children can be taken away from me at any time because their teachers have convinced them that they're the wrong gender and they need to get hormone therapy, and I'm opposed to it. So they're going to be taken away by Child Protective Services or Social in Sweden or whatever. And, you know, my life is just a meaningless rut of going to work, coming back, and blah, blah, blah. All this entire dystopia, they're realizing it. And suddenly the Muslim arguments, Islamic arguments, are starting to make a lot of sense. Like, And this is what happened at the conference. A lot of atheists came up to me and said, wow, you know, I really appreciate Islam more and more. Some of them said, I'm not going to accept Islamic theology, but I can't argue with the values. So may Allah guide them to Islam. But this is a obsolete strategy that people like Aron or whoever, all these other atheists and Christian apologists, they're using like an old strategy. They're appealing to this status quo and the common American beliefs from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, like the common American sentiments about liberty and equality and democracy. But hey, buddy, you're a little late. Like, those values are going out the door. Like, or people's confidence in those values are going out the door.
Practiced by literally every single
and then you
society
said
in human history.
Said ultimately that no marriage can succeed without patriarchy, without the man being in charge of the woman. So my 13-year marriage apparently was a hallucination as well.
No.
Because I'm not
the
her
claim
master,
that I
nor
made,
is
you're
she
strawmanning
mine.
my position. My position is that patriarchy.
His 13-year marriage. So he's got to be like in his mid 60s. I mean, he looks like he's in his late 60s, but I'm actually not sure how old he is. I'll have to look that up. But let's say he's in his mid 60s. So 13 years of marriage, that means he got married when he was in his 50s. So what was he doing in his first 50 years of life? Like, that was his first marriage, or has he been divorced? Like, what's the background there? Has he been just living alone? Like, let's look this up right now, actually. How old is Aron Ra? He brought up his personal life, so. Okay, he's age 60, actually, according to Wikipedia. So 13 years means he got married when he was 47. So then what happened? What was, since his adulthood up until 47? Was he like had multiple marriages, or he was just a bachelor until age 47? Like, is that really like, this is the model of life? Like, he's putting himself there, like he's a model, like, oh, I've been happily married. So you clearly have not been happily married for the majority of your life, the majority of your adult life.
Patriarchy provides the best success rate for marriage. Yeah, you can have a great marriage, equality marriage. That's true. That's possible, but that doesn't contradict the general rule.
Okay.
There's a reason. Like, you believe in evolution, right?
I don't believe in evolution.
Okay, you accept the amazing fact of evolution.
Yes.
So
I can show it to you and prove it to you too.
Great, excellent. So if evolution is true, cultural evolution is true, you accept that. Why is it that all of human history we have these patriarchal systems of family and society. If the strongest survive, it
Which
seems
is not
like
an
all of
evolutionary-
these cultures that are independently developing throughout the world across time and space, they all came up with the same solution or the same model of patriarchy. How do you explain that from an evolutionary perspective? How could something so dysfunctional and evil end up dominating the entire human history?
Because one, it's not the strong that survives, is one that can best adapt. That wasn't Darwin's statement, that was Herbert Spencer, an economist, who said so later. Two, you're talking about tribal societies where you have the warrior and the hunter versus the homekeeper and that sort of thing. We don't
Every
live
society.
in, what's that?
Every society.
Right, began that way. So that's how that began. That's the answer to your question.
And maintain.
That's how patriarchy is how those societies began, the tribal societies. So again, like his ignorance, every society, not just tribal societies, throughout history, throughout human history, whether you want to say that civilization is 10,000 years old, 5,000 years old, whatever, go into the hunter-gatherer period, hundreds of thousands of years, they were all patriarchal. Even today's societies are patriarchal. Men are predominantly in charge. This is what the feminists are trying to destroy. The feminists are trying to destroy patriarchal societies. There has been no matriarchal society ever in history, and I've pointed this out many, many times. We'll point it out again. Let's look up matriarchy. Go to Britannica. Matriarchy, hypothetical social system in which the mother or female elder has absolute authority over the family group. By extension, one or more women, as in a council, exert a similar level of authority over the community as a whole. Under the influence of Charles Darwin's theories of biological evolution, many 19th century scholars sought to formulate a theory of cultural evolution. The theory known as unilineal cultural evolution, now discredited, suggested that human social organization evolved through a series of stages. Animalistic sexual promiscuity was followed by matriarchy, which in turn was followed by patriarchy. The American anthropologist Lewis Henry Morgan, the Swiss anthropologist J.J. Bachofen, and the German philosopher Friedrich Engels were particularly important in developing this theory. The consensus among anthropologists, modern anthropologists and sociologists, is that while many cultures bestow power preferentially on one sex or the other, matriarchal societies in this original evolutionary sense have never existed. Never. At no point in history has there been a non-patriarchal society. There has never been a non-patriarchal society. However, some scholars continue to use the terms matriarchy and patriarchy in the general sense for descriptive, analytical, and pedagogical purposes. So this idea of there being a society at any point in history, he wants to limit it to just tribal societies. Okay, this is contradicting Charles Darwin, because Charles Darwin actually believed that the earliest human societies were unilineal. They weren't patriarchal or matriarchal. There was just equality of the sexes. This has been debunked, completely debunked by anthropology and archaeology and history. Even the tribal hunter-gatherer societies were patriarchal. Civilization started as patriarchal. It has continued as patriarchy. And even today, we are living in a patriarchy where men have dominant political positions in the vast majority of countries, if not all countries. Even if you have a female head of state, the majority of those in power are male. This is what feminism is trying to disrupt. And this is what liberalism is trying to disrupt by creating equality. But the question here that poor Aron doesn't understand, he can't wrap his mind around it, is, well, why is this the case? Like, why is patriarchy so dominant historically? According to a cultural evolutionist understanding, it's because that is the most adaptive. That leads to the most adaptive success. So there must have all kinds of positives to it. When it is so consistent, it's not the influence of one society influencing another, like those initial tribal societies. The question is, why did everyone come up with the same solution to life? Why did independently, all these different cultures throughout time and space, they all arrived at the same conclusion that patriarchy is the solution. Men in charge is the solution. Those are the societies that won out. Those are the civilizations that won out. If there had been some matriarchal society somewhere, it must have immediately or very quickly been wiped out, because there's no traces of that society for archaeologists or anthropologists to discover. And that's why Encyclopedia Britannica says matriarchy is hypothetical. It's just something imagined with no reality. So this is the point that I'm trying to make in this debate with Aron Ra. He's clueless.
Continue that way.
But they don't have to maintain and continue. We're not hunter-gatherers anymore. We don't have to be the warrior providers like we used to be.
No, I want an explanation.
So is his understanding of history that you had these tribal societies and then you had modern societies and there was nothing in between? Like, is he just ignoring thousands of years, millennia of human history that we're not hunter-gatherer and we're not modern times? Does he not recognize that huge swath of civilization and that was patriarchal?
For why that practice persisted
All right,
for
then listen to me
millennia,
while I
thousands
repeat
of
it.
years.
Right.
Why did it persist?
Because
if it wasn't,
we all began in that
no,
tribal
people can change.
hunter-gatherer.
Like, you can have society A that decides to have a kind of equality, feminist
Well,
marriage,
you've
and then
got the
society
answer.
Like, the whole point of evolution is that there's change because of what is more or less adaptive. Like, that is natural selection. The best adapted will survive and proliferate. That is how phenotypes, and phenotypes meaning the physical characteristics of an organism, that phenotype proliferates because that phenotype makes the organism better adapted to its environmental niche. That is the theory of natural selection. And there is mutation within the genetic code. This is the new Darwinian new synthesis, which Darwin had no idea about genetic mutation, but later Darwinists added this idea of genetics that had been recently discovered to the theory of evolution and created what's called the new synthesis. Can't talk today. And what this means is that the genome is mutating, random mutations that change the phenotype. The genotype determines the phenotype, and the mutation, for example, a finch will, because of some genetic mutation, develop a straighter beak, or a hooked beak. And that hooked beak, for that one organism that had the mutation, makes that finch better able to get the grubs or better able to get food, which makes it a healthier and stronger and therefore better able to reproduce with other finches. And that hooked genetic mutation starts to proliferate in more and more offspring. And those offspring are out competing because they're better adapted and better able to get food. And that phenotype proliferates in the population. That is the theory of natural selection. That is Darwin's theory combined with genetic mutation. And this is what Richard Dawkins teaches, whatever. This is incoherent theory, by the way. That's for a separate live stream. But the point is that according to his beliefs in evolution, this should be the case with societies as well. So patriarchal societies, the reason that we see them universally represented across civilizations for thousands and thousands of years, there must be a reason for that. There must be an adaptive reason why that particular model of society has proliferated in history in such a way. It doesn't matter how it started, that tribal societies were patriarchal, okay, whatever. But if that model was not best adaptive, it would have fallen the way of the dinosaurs. It would have died out the way of the dodo, because it's not adapted to the environment or for the world history, and humanity. If it were a dysfunctional model for society, it would have died out, but it didn't. It proliferated. It became the dominant universal model of patriarchy. So why is that evolutionist? Why is that atheist? Atheists need to explain that, but they don't. They can't. and they just ignore the question. This is their intellectual dishonesty. This is why I can't take atheists seriously. They don't engage with any of the substantive critiques that are made against them.
That is
Go back.
patriarchal.
Okay.
And then if we strongest survive or the best adapted survive, then which will survive? The equality, marriage-based society or the patriarchal society? In every country, in every society, in every civilization
all
historically,
began-
the patriarchal ones came out on
Which
top.
all began from that Stone Age culture of the system. that I
Cultures
just
can
described.
change, right?
Yes, they can. That's why they did. And that's why
They
we're
didn't
not,
until the past 200 years.
lots of things changed in the past 200 years. We've made
Even in
significant
today's
progress.
culture, it's still patriarchal.
Practically everything we've invented has been in the last 200 years because it accelerates.
You're not engaging with the point. If
You
you
didn't
have
have
society
one.
A,
If I may just be blunt on
That's
here,
pretty
your,
rude
your
to say.
dystopian fantasy of
it's pretty
of
rude to say
living
for
in
someone
pods.
who believes that all the best countries happen to be white and we can't know if that's racist or not. So my point was very simple. You have society A that is feminist and society B that is patriarchal. Don't you think that if feminism and equality marriage was such a rational idea that there would be people in history who would have stumbled upon it prior to the past 200 years? Human history
in
is...
advanced cultures historically, yes, they did.
Oh, so advanced.
Yeah.
So primitive cultures wouldn't have the
I said it
IQ
started,
to
I
develop
said it
that?
started as hunter-gatherer
yeah, it
societies.
started fine.
And then we have, like Greeks and Roma, that we have other societies to develop.
Well,
that
why did it
can
start,
then
actually? That's a
change.
good point. Why did it start?
How many times do you need me to answer the same question?
Why did patriarchy start? Why was that evolutionary adaptive?
That
For
is
the hunter
same
and gatherers.
question I've just answered like 4 or 5
Oh,
times.
I'm sorry, I missed it. What was the answer?
Because they all began as Stone Age societies of
What
hunters.
My question is, why did it start? Why did patriarchy have this root in the hunter-gatherer societies? His answer: because it began. Because it began. Just try to wrap your mind around how. Oh man, why did democratic representationalism start? What was the cause of that historically? Please give us an analysis about the origins of liberal secular thought, or give us a analysis of the origins of Confucian thought. How did that develop? And then your response is, well, it developed because it began. Okay. It began. Well, can you elaborate on that? Why exactly did it begin at this point in history? Well, I answered that. It began because it began.
Began prior to the Stone Age. There were people, right, that evolved. So why did they evolve patriarchy in those Stone Age societies?
For the reason I'm now going to explain for the 5th time, because they started out as hunter-gatherer societies.
They started out as patriarchal. Why though? Why? Can you please explain that? Because they started. How many times do I have to answer your question? This is the 5th time.
The men playing the role of the hunters and the warriors because of a slight advantage in physical strength, whereas the women were, for a number of reasons, connected to the children, the upbringing, the home. The roles were discerned that way, and they don't have to stay that way. So in advanced societies,
The roles were just discerned that way. It just happened. This is just how the roles just happen to be like this, where the men go out and hunt and the women stay at home. It was just decided. But why? Why was that? Like, give an evolutionary explanation. Evolution, right, Aron? You're constantly telling us how much you know about the amazing fact of evolution. Explain and give us an evolutionary argument. Why are men bigger than women? Why do men have larger muscles? Why are men larger in physical stature than women? Give us an evolutionary argument for gender distinction and sex differences. There are all kinds of explanations in the scientific literature if you had read it, if you're aware of it. Like, we have to put these atheists in their place. Like, you bring this trash, this uneducated trash, ignorant trash. He is so arrogant. These people are so arrogant and condescending to Christians and Muslims and anyone who believes in God. Look at his arrogance throughout this whole thing. He's like, oh, you didn't bring a point. You just believe in fantasies. You like this kind of arrogant attitude. Okay, you want to be arrogant? We can be arrogant too. Let's see who's really the moron here. Aron, Matt Dillahunty, all these losers. Let's see who's really educated or not about evolution. You talk about how amazing evolution is, but you can't give an evolutionary explanation for something as simple as sex differences.
They don't stay that way. We adapt and improve. Please don't ask me to answer that same question a sixth time.
So these advanced societies happen to be, like, which countries developed equality marriage? It happened to be, guess what, white countries. It happened to be the Northwestern European countries that developed feminist. Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Historically.
No, it isn't. Sai Shanagal, Japanese author, female. There was a time when even Japan allowed for this kind of advance.
So the fact that there is a female author proves that there were non-patriarchal societies. Boy, oh boy, he doesn't even know what patriarchy means. Like, he doesn't understand what the term is referring to. Rachel Maddow understanding of history and the world, like Huffington Post, like maybe not even that, like Reddit atheism subreddit, like that's his understanding.
And when the United States was founded, the reason that we were so popular was not because we were white. The reason that we were so popular was because we were the first secular nation in the world. We were the first meritocracy, where it didn't matter about the caste system in India. It didn't matter about the Huguenots versus the Catholics or any of that religious nonsense going on back home. You could come over here, and then those religious laws no longer apply. It no longer mattered whether you had a religion or what religion it was. Religion didn't rule. We had secular law, and that was hugely attractive. That made the melting pot of the United States. That attracted people from every country.
So why did whites come across this brilliant idea?
So the melting pot is what attracted people. Like, that's why people are coming to the U.S. is because of secularism. You know that Mexico is a secular country, Brazil is a secular country, Costa Rica is a secular country, Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, these are secular countries. They're all coming to the U.S., a secular country. So is it secularism that's attracting them to migrate? Is it secularism? They have secular countries. Why are they coming to the U.S.? Or what about all of the people who migrate to Saudi and UAE and Qatar and Kuwait? They're migrating to these Muslim religious countries from secular countries. Why? Is it because of if it were because of secularism, they wouldn't leave their secular countries to come to the wealthy Muslim countries. So this explanation is ludicrous.
Is it because we were racist?
No, what is it? I want your explanation from you. Like, why is it the whites that developed this kind of amazing secularism and equality marriage? You said earlier that it's advanced societies, advanced civilizations that figure out that, marriage should be all about equality.
Yeah.
No, Japan has not had any kind of equality marriage. It's a highly patriarchal society. In the current day Japanese parliament, there's only 2 women, and they're not allowed to talk.
I know.
So tell me about patriarchy being abolished, supposedly, by whites in Europe and in America. What makes whites better able to discover these amazing truths of equality?
I didn't say that. I said that around 1200 or so, Japan was more egalitarian than it is now.
Japan was more egalitarian because he knows like one Japanese author in history. It was more egalitarian. He thinks that if a woman can write something, that means it's an egalitarian society, or it's more egalitarian. Guess what? Japanese society are writing all kinds of stuff right now in Japan. How is that a sign of? How is that a marker of what is more or less egalitarian? Japanese society is highly patriarchal, highly regimented in its history. If anything, now it's like devolving into this liberal cesspool because of the influence of the West.
And they have since reverted. I'm sorry if that doesn't fit the ill painting that you're trying to paint here. Just like your opening statement with your dystopian nightmare about things that were never going to happen, about what atheists do that no atheist does and never did. We offer free thought. We offer freedom of religion. And while we do not offer absolute freedom of speech, we allow freedom of speech. And the thing we are most against...
It's a lie.
Excuse me?
What free thought? I said already, if you say in certain Western, the most secular atheistic European societies, if you say homosexuality is immoral, if you misgender someone, you can be put in prison. Literally, you can be fined. Are you opposed to those kinds of restrictions
You're going
on
to have
speech?
to show me that. Are you opposed to that, if that's the case? Where if you misgender someone, or if you say that I disagree with homosexuality, or homosexuality is wrong, that's going to put you in prison?
You disagree with that?
I would need to see proof of that, because I don't believe you.
No, there are hate speech laws in the UK. For example, last year, there was a Muslim woman who went on the street and was saying homosexuality is a sin. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. Society is going to be destroyed by God. She was arrested for hate speech. She was fined for hate speech. This is something very common.
Okay.
Even posting on social media in the EU, you can be prosecuted for statements that you make on Twitter or Facebook that violate hate speech laws. If you're ignorant about like these laws and you're focused on America, fine. But even Canada in the north, they have similar laws. If you misgender, this was the whole controversy
Even
with
in the
Jordan
US.
Peterson. He was
Like even in the US, they have these kinds of hate speech laws, like increasingly the case. They find ways, even though technically, like hate speech should be protected, but now they are categorizing more and more things under hate speech that are not protected. So, like, this was big news when it happened. 15 years in Iowa jail for burning pride flag. Like, this guy burned an LGBT flag. A U.S. judge, can you see that? A U.S. judge has handed down a sentence of at least 15 years to a man who stole an LGBT pride flag from a church and burned it outside a strip club. Adolfo Martinez, age 30, admitted to media that he took the flag from Ames United Church of Christ due to his animosity towards homosexuals. So this is burning a flag is not protected speech, in the United States. If it's a pride flag, that is. You can burn other flags, but if you burn this particular flag, that is hate speech, and you face up to 15 years in prison in certain states, apparently. Where is Aron's awareness of these like basic things? Like we could do a whole live stream, like all examples of this. Let's see. Hold on. I'll bring you some more examples. Pavi Rasanen, Finnish MP in Bible hate speech trial. This is BBC, by the way. This is a BBC website. A former Finnish interior minister has gone on trial for hate speech against gay people following comments which she says were based on the Bible. Prosecutors accuse Paivi of making derogatory comments on 3 occasions, including in a 2019 tweet showing verses from the Bible. So if you cite verses of the Bible that are against homosexuality, guess what? You are a criminal in Finland and throughout Europe, basically, in Canada.
He was going contrary to the law by saying that I am not going to be forced to use someone's preferred pronouns. That's the whole controversy with Jordan Peterson. Why? Because Canadian law has been changed to prosecute or to make that illegal to misgender people.
So the debate we're supposed to be doing on, which would be better for society.
So he again changes the subject. He can't engage with these facts, like factual points. He's just unaware. And I don't want to focus on LGBT. The amount of restriction on people in these liberal countries, and what you can say and what you can advocate for, what you can write, is heavily, heavily restricted. But none of those restrictions are experienced or noted by Aron. Why? Because he's a liberal. He is a pure liberal whose entire understanding of the world is perfectly in line with the establishment power. So he doesn't experience these restrictions because these are things that he agrees with 100%. Like, these are values that he has adopted 100%, the liberal values. It's only people who are opposed to liberalism, are outside of this liberal philosophy, people who are Christian or Muslim or whatever, they're the ones who experience the boot on our necks, the knee on our necks of the liberal system that is restricting us and controlling us and threatening us to deplatform, to debank, to throw us out of the financial system, to put us on no-fly lists, to characterize us as extremists and destroy us in terms of our jobs and our finances. Aron and other liberals don't experience that. They have this they're living in this hoax of, oh, we have all this freedom. It's because your entire understanding of everything is establishment approved. So you don't experience that. But for people who want to stray outside of what is acceptable according to the totalitarian, authoritarian, liberal system, the matrix, that's when you experience the dark, moonless night of liberalism. That's when you experience it. But of course, if you're just a NPC bot like Aron Ra, you're not going to experience that. When you're a simple-minded bot, NPC just regurgitating the same script for 60 years of your life as a Satanist, you're not going to experience that restriction. You're not going to experience that brutality of the state. You want to know what the brutality of the liberal state is? Don't look at me and telling you about being deplatformed or debanked. Talk to Algerians. Talk to people in Bangladesh and the subcontinent. Talk to Africans. Talk to Native Americans in the US. Talk to those people who have been crushed and destroyed by colonial power. Watch that video about the Algerian genocide, where it's liberalism that justifies this boot on your neck. And the justification is that we have to liberalize because liberalism is the best system that leads to utopia. So these illiberal people, like these Muslims and these blacks and these Hispanics and these Asians, these Chinese, these Aboriginals, they don't understand the value of science and reason. So we have to civilize them. We have to educate them. And if we have to do it with them kicking and screaming, so be it. They are going to get the message. They're going to be civilized, whether they like it or not. And if we have to soak the earth in blood, it's worth it. The ends justify the means. Watch that video. Look at what Alexis de Tocqueville has to say. Look at what Thomas Jefferson has to say. Look at what Jeremy Bentham has to say. Look at what Sam Harris has to say. Sam Harris, the new atheist, coward, look at what he has to say. Sam Harris needs to debate me on these issues. Let's talk about totalitarianism and talk about how Sam Harris is talking about preemptive nuclear strikes on Muslims because Muslims have the wrong ideas. Muslims have the wrong beliefs. That's all liberalism. That's all atheism. Own it.
I, as an atheist, am advocating for free thought, and you're telling me that I'm not. You're telling me that I'm lying.
No, I'm saying that you
am,
have
in
like a
fact.
fantasy
You
understanding that's
falsely
not based
accused
in
me.
reality.
You said that liberalism was always authoritarian. It is not. I'm in the anti-authoritarian left quadrant of the political compass, which you really should look up at some point. So we are not always authoritarian. Most of us, in fact, are not. If you take a poll of the entirety of the country, if everybody did the study, they would realize that most of the population actually leans libertarian left where I am. So that was a false statement. We do not support authoritarianism. We are not advocating for an atheist society would not mean an authoritarian society, whereas an Islamic society would.
Where has a liberal society not led to totalitarianism and authoritarianism? Like that comment, like that atheist who was commenting in the chat earlier, he was like, oh, yeah, there's some authoritarianism that plagues Western societies today, but that's not the fault of liberalism. Okay, show us a liberal society that wasn't totalitarian or authoritarian. Show us. Are you just saying that liberalism hasn't been tried yet? Real liberalism hasn't been tried? Because every kind of liberal society we look at has these characteristics, has all of these characteristics. Yeah, you can enjoy life as a libertarian in liberal society. Wow, great argument, Aron. If you're a conservative Muslim, you will have a great life living in Afghanistan, living in these conservative Muslim societies with Islamic law. If you are a Muslim, a believing Muslim, you'll have a great life. This is the kind of circular reasoning that atheists use. Oh yeah, if you're a liberal like me, a Satanist atheist, you'll love to live in a Satanist atheist secular society. Wow, great argument, brilliant. The whole point of me appealing to marriage and family and community and the value of the human being as a essence of the human being, the value of God. These are universal values. These are values that are shared by the vast majority of human beings, regardless of whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. I base my argumentation on those universal values in order to have a common ground with an atheist, because presumably Aron agrees that marriage and family and community are valuable. Maybe he doesn't actually. Some atheists clearly don't value those things. They are 100% on the Yuval Harari, get in the pod, eat the bugs vision of the future, because they think that the only thing that really matters is your bodily pleasure. That's the only good that exists. And this is Jeremy Bentham's point as the preeminent liberal philosopher and founder of utilitarianism. The only thing that really exists, the only thing that's really good is the physical feelings that you get from pleasure. And the only thing that's bad is the pain that you can suffer. And there's nothing beyond that. There is no value beyond that. Everything else is a myth. Just like religion is a myth, these other values are also myths. So we don't operate on the basis of myth. We operate on the basis of fact. And the fact that your pleasure centers in the brain are activated with certain stimuli, that's what's real. Nothing else is real. That's the basic atheist point. And what that leads to is get in the pod and eat the bugs. That's what this debate should be about. But Aron is completely non-conversant with these kinds of points.
So you are trying to paint something on me that is not going to fit. I am countering you. Now, you want to talk about something that's going to make society good. I say free thought is going to make that good. You say I don't allow free thought. I'm demonstrating that I do.
So you think that Holocaust denial should be allowed in Europe?
I don't know what to say about Europe because I can't prove to you on the fly what laws actually exist.
Should it be legal or not? It's a simple question.
I live in a country where stupidity reigns.
Okay, so you're proving that you're not a free speech absolutist. You do think certain ideas should be restricted.
I did
certain
already tell you.
Certain ideas should be restricted.
I did already
You just draw the lines.
Hello?
You're interrupting me. You just talk for 5 minutes. I let you speak. Don't interrupt, man.
You're
extremely rude.
You've done nothing but monologue.
Yeah, I gave you your chance to talk for 5 minutes to give your speech, so this is my response
And then
to
I
that.
didn't.
I asked you a question, and you said that You couldn't answer whether Holocaust denial should be legal or illegal.
That is not
that
what I
indicates should be legal or illegal.
I said I can't speak for the laws in Europe because I don't know what the laws are in Europe.
In the abstract. Abstract.
And then I didn't get to answer because you then asked me another question as another distraction.
Because you can't answer a simple question. In the abstract, forget about Europe, forget about the laws of any particular country. Should Holocaust denial be legal or not?
As I was trying to answer when you interrupted the answer to ask yet another question, yes, I think that in the country that I live in, stupidity reigns, right? People get to say all kinds of stupid things. Now, I'm not a free speech absolutist because you do have to be responsible for the things that you say. But whether people say stupid things, sure. We just watched Herschel Walker talk about a vampire movie as part of his campaign speech. I saw Marjorie Taylor Greene say they don't teach us in history about how in the ice ages they had to pay taxes to heat up the planet and melt the ice. People.
So you should be responsible for what you say. So if somehow society was majority Muslim or Christian, real Christians, not, the kind of Christians that we see in large numbers today. And these Muslims and Christians decided to destroy Aron Ra's life by boycotting him and making sure that he has no place to work. He can't get a job. He is not allowed to speak. He's banned off of all platforms. He's banned off of social media completely. All financial institutions close Aron Ra's banking accounts. He can't use PayPal. He can't use Venmo. He can't travel because he is considered a hate monger. Aron Ra is fine with the consequences of that. Those are the consequences of your speech, Aron. You want to blaspheme against Christianity or against Islam. Okay, you're free to do so. Blaspheme against Christianity and Islam and the Bible and the Quran, but deal with the consequences. You're responsible for your speech, Aron. You're responsible for your speech. Would he accept that? He accepts that for Muslims and Christians. He accepts that for others that he disagrees with. He says, yeah, enjoy the consequences of your stupidity. That's the way he puts it. So this is the free society that he advocates. If you have the wrong ideas, yeah, go ahead, say the wrong things, but we're going to destroy your life. Those are the consequences of speaking openly. As we've seen with particular celebrities recently who have just said certain things about, certain groups and certain historical events. Oh yeah, you're free to do that, but we're going to put you in a mental institution and take away your children, and we're going to close all your bank accounts, and we're going to restrict your travel. We're going to portray you as, this evil person so that the whole world boycotts you, and we're going to constantly imply that you're suicidal, and on and on and on. But we have free speech. We respect free speech. We're in a free democratic society. This is a clown world.
Say that these are the people running for office, and they're that damn dumb. Yeah, you can't make a law against stupid. You can't make a law against hate. You can make a law when it's going to lead to violence, because you do have to have some
That's what people argue. They say that Holocaust denial leads to violence. They say saying that homosexuality is immoral leads to violence.
I would have to see the evidence and hear the argument and make an informed decision.
But if it is proven that it does increase violence, then you would be fine with banning it.
I'm not going to make a judgment without the information.
But in principle, you would be okay with banning certain types of speech because they could potentially lead to violence if the statistical data prove that out.
It has to be a realistic expectation. Not, I want to get back to the debate, not the opening statement you made about
blaspheming
living
against
in pods.
God in the UAE or in a Muslim society can increase violence towards Muslims. It has potential, right? So if the science shows that blaspheming against Islam.
Once again, it has to have a realistic probability.
Let me finish my hypothesis here, or my suggestion. If you have a Muslim country and there's someone like you in that Muslim country blaspheming against God, saying that Islam is just a delusion, that could potentially inspire people to rebel against the government, or it could inspire people to commit acts of hatred against Muslims. If the statistics showed that that kind of blasphemy increased the rate of violence, would you be in favor of blasphemy laws to restrict blasphemy?
I am not in favor of blasphemy laws, and I know that you are, because I saw the interview
This
wherein
doesn't
you
ignore
said
the
that you would
point.
criminalize blasphemy as a death sentence. So you would
Oh.
execute people for realizing that they can no longer buy into this bullshit.
Yeah, just like the liberal colonial governments executed Muslims for
I
disagreeing
have to
with
wonder what liberal means to
Amazing
you, because you
point.
think
Liberal means the pursuit of maximum freedom and maximum equality. Thomas Jefferson was a liberal. Donald Trump is a liberal in that philosophical sense. I'm not talking about leftism versus right wing.
Well,
I'm
I know
talking
there's
about
like
liberalism as a concept,
I
a
know there's like
philosophical
3 or
concept.
4 different definitions.
No.
No, there really are.
Maximizing freedom and equality.
There really are 3 or 4 different definitions. One is that liberalism is leftism. That was what I thought you were using before. And that liberalism is left-leaning, where the political compass puts it in the center. And there's another one that says that it favors socialism as a means to communism, because they're going off Marxist theory. And I get that there are a number of different definitions, and some of them conflate leftist and liberal.
Now, the definition is known. Again, go to the Encyclopedia Britannica and let's read what the definition says. Liberalism, political doctrine that takes protecting and enhancing the freedom of the individual to be the central problem of politics. Individualism, freedom. Liberals typically believe that government is necessary to protect individuals from being harmed by others, but they also recognize that government itself can pose a threat to liberty. As the American revolutionary pamphleteer Thomas Paine expressed in Common Sense, government is at best a necessary evil. Law, judges, and police are needed to secure the individual's life and liberty, but their coercive power may also be turned against the individual. The problem then is to devise a system that gives the power necessary to protect individual liberty, but also prevents those who govern from abusing that power. So this is what liberalism is. There aren't multiple definitions. Like, this is what liberalism is concerned with. Yeah, there's different facets to liberalism. It's an entire philosophy. There are different nuances and different aspects to it, but the central idea of liberalism is maximizing individual freedom and maximizing equality between people. That's what liberalism is. And it's not a left-wing or right-wing thing. Both the left and the right political wings agree on liberalism.
But I'm not accepting that American expansionism was liberalism. That's
Thomas
not something
Jefferson is not
liberalism did.
is George Washington a liberal? Is the Constitution of the United States a liberal
something
document?
the entirety of the United States does. I wouldn't say that that's the fault.
Is the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness a liberal doctrine? I'm talking about liberalism in the philosophical sense, not in the terms of left-wing or right-wing politics. If you look at the quadrant...
Did he not take American history in school? Was he skipping class and hanging out with the goth Satanists, skipping class in high school? Did you not take American history? Because I think that's a requirement. You have to take it to graduate high school. Did you not learn about the U.S. Constitution or the Bill of Rights or any of this history? Like, you can't answer the question about whether George Washington is liberal or not. Like, in his mind, like, I can just imagine what is going on in his mind. Wait, if I say George Washington is a liberal, George Washington probably was a racist. So if I say he was a liberal, I'm acknowledging that George Washington, the white racist, has the same ideology as I do. So I better not answer this question. I better change the subject. That's what's going on in his head, I bet. But the fact of the matter is, George Washington was liberal. That was the whole idea of America, rebelling against tyranny, rebelling against authoritarianism and totalitarianism. That's the whole idea of America, the American Revolution. You can't answer. Like, it's just laughable. It's laughably incompetent.
If you look at the quadrant that you keep referring to and saying that I don't know about, that entire quadrant is liberal. Why? Because every quadrant believes in maximizing liberty and freedom. They just disagree on how best to achieve that. Donald Trump is a liberal in the sense that I'm using it, because he thinks that, yeah, we need to maximize people's freedom
each other because
and equality.
we're using the different definitions that I mentioned before.
Well, the whole point of this debate is whether atheism is better for society as opposed to
Okay, so we're
Islam.
offering free thought.
His definition is circular, by the way, because he just says that whatever is totalitarian is not liberalism. Whatever advocates for war is not liberalism. Whatever advocates for restricting speech is not liberalism. So then when you point out these secular governments that do exactly those things, all of those things, he has to say, well, those aren't the real liberal countries. That's not, liberalism hasn't been tried yet. That's basically the response that they give. This is like the no true Scotsman fallacy. Like there's no example of liberalism that has been implemented in history, basically. But then I catch him on the contradiction of that. Okay, so you think that anything that restricts speech is not liberal. Well, what about these restrictions on speech against Holocaust denial or against anti-LGBT sentiment or all these examples? Then he's stuck and he has to change the topic. He has to change the subject because he can't say that, yeah, I'm liberal and I agree with those restrictions. Yeah, I'm liberal and I agree with war. Yeah, I'm liberal and I agree with these kinds of policies. That just shows that he's full of nonsense. So he just slips out by changing the subject.
You're not. You're offering a death sentence for unbelievers.
No, I think people should be allowed to explore all kinds of ideas of like, is homosexuality really right or wrong? Is COVID, really this kind of dangerous disease, or is it more like the flu? Is, different historical events, should we be able to question those historical events, or should we be able to question the government on certain so-called conspiracy theories, or will we be branded as extremists by the Biden administration or the Trump administration?
There is a
Those are the
definition.
things that you cannot question or you cannot
There is a
broach.
definition for extremist.
You don't let me finish my question or my point. So those areas of speech are heavily restricted, even in the United States. Liberal governments have a long history of restricting speech. I think that all of those things should be investigated, all should be talked about. So maybe I'm more of a free speech advocate than you are. I just say, don't blaspheme against God. Don't say things that will destroy these important human institutions like marriage, family, community, God, and belief. All of those things are important to preserve. Therefore, it makes logical sense, practical sense to restrict speech that will destroy a community.
We're not trying to destroy your religious traditions. We're trying to correct
You are. That's what atheism wants to do. People like you and these ex-Muslims, they want to wipe Islam off the face of the earth, right? They say Muslims need to become atheists.
No.
No?
I said you have one of the most...
He has a whole channel. His whole miserable career is dedicated to debunking religion, debunking Christianity and Islam and the Quran and the Bible. And now he wants to say with a straight face, no, I don't want to destroy these religions. I'm just trying to create as much doubt about these religions and say that they're all nonsense and they're all lies, but I don't want to harm those religions. Of course not. Man, it's hard. It's hard to know what to say with this kind of response.
Fundamental of all human rights is to think and believe what you will for whatever reason makes sense to you, and you don't even have to explain why that is. Now, if you say, I want to question whether vaccines work, or I want to question whether evolution is real, what have you, I've already seen the article that you wrote where you said that you will deny even evolution because you're going to go on an erroneous assumption of authority of Scripture to deny demonstrable scientific fact. I realize that you're going to be that way. You're welcome to question whatever you do. The extremist is when the extremist part, that label applies when you take your assumption of authority to deny reality. That, by definition, is a religious extremist. That's the way I apply it.
Who defines reality?
Who?
Yeah, you're saying the extremism means denying reality. If you define reality, yeah, that's very convenient for you. Everything that goes against your reality is extremism. If let me define reality, and then you're going to be the extremist.
So you want to say that you want to question all of these things, all these established facts? Well, how far does questioning go? At what point do you accept answers? I mean,
I thought you were a proponent of free thought.
Yeah, they're established facts that we can't question. They're established facts that no one can research or investigate because you're going to get deplatformed, banned from all financial institutions. You're a religious extremist. That puts you on watch lists, that you can't travel. You're going to have a problem living your life because you've been branded as a religious extremist, according to Aron. So how can you investigate these things? They're established facts that you cannot question. They're established facts that you cannot investigate, but we're all about freedom and free thought. Like, look at the contradictions in this guy.
Don't you want questions?
Of course I do.
Great.
You're not very good at giving answers, are you?
What was your question?
Okay. At what point do you accept answers? So you're going to question something. You're going to question vaccines. You're going to question evolution, right? You say you're going to question evolution. Go ahead, question evolution to me. I can answer. I can help you. If you've got a problem, you don't understand evolution, I'll be happy to help you, except that you've already said you're going to believe your storybook no matter what. Doesn't matter. I could show you evolution happening in real time with a time machine. It wouldn't matter. You're going to believe the storybook.
The people
who is restricting speaking out against evolution? Like, that's not what I mentioned. I mentioned questioning certain kinds of government lines, government policies, questioning certain historical facts, questioning certain so-called conspiracy theories, questioning certain kind of gender policy, questioning why don't we question whether liberalism is a good system or it leads to totalitarianism? Like, let's question that. Guess what? We have a video on that is restricted by YouTube. And is, why is a restriction put on our YouTube videos as being inappropriate for under 18, giving the history of all these liberal thinkers who have advocated for genocide? And there's nothing, graphic in our video. We've censored everything in the video. YouTube still restricts it as being, offensive. Why? I wonder why. Why does YouTube have all of these restrictions on certain very specific topics? You can talk about Islam all you want. You can talk about evolution all you want. Get into these other topics? No, it's not allowed. Why doesn't Aron address those restrictions?
So there's a difference between questioning.
The liberal proponents of restricting speech say that certain kinds of speech lead to hatred and violence, and that's what justifies restricting it. But this becomes a very convenient way to restrict basically whatever you don't like.
So if you're gay in a Muslim country,
literally just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Biden said that if you question election results, that makes you an extremist. You don't believe in democracy, and you could face criminal charges. You could be put on a watch list because you question election results. The logic that liberals give, again, if Donald Trump were the president, he could say the same thing. The logic that they give is this kind of questioning of democracy leads to violence, and therefore we have to restrict it.
It demonstrably did lead to violence, and that was an issue.
So you think it should be illegal to question election results?
No, I don't, as I keep repeatedly explaining. A little slow on the uptake. So, on the point of the debate about which is going to give us more, right? You're talking about Islam, which is going to kill you for apostasy and kill you if it admits being gay. You're saying you advocate free speech. Well, obviously not in those cases, and many other cases. But you're going to say that you're the free speech advocate, and that I, the anti-authoritarian, am the authoritarian, and that I, the one who is strongly advocating for free speech and freedom of religion, I'm the one who's trying to shut you down.
Who's slow on the uptake now, Aron? Like, that's what we've been talking about for the past hour, and you're just now getting it?
And that I want us to live in pods and eat bugs. So that was the problem. The reason I didn't address your opening argument was because it's an utter fantasy. There's no reality to it.
Do you think there's a problem with people living in pods? Do you think do you have an objection to gene editing?
Do you want to live in a pod?
No, don't
you have
answer
the right
the question
to live
with
in
a question.
Pod if you want to.
Do you think that, so imagine this scenario. You have this gene editing technology, and you can use it to increase the IQ of a child in the womb to 300, increase industriousness so that a person can work 20 hours a day and not get tired. This kind of gene editing technology, do you think that...
Fan of Gattaca, are you?
Right. Would that be something that we should promote or prohibit, according to atheism?
The discussion was on the matter of consent, right? So I don't know what the issue with consent would be in gene editing cases for humans.
Well, they would say that if we don't make it mandatory for everyone, then there'll be these gigantic inequalities. Or
I don't
China.
know who they are. We're talking about
the atheistic secular authorities of these countries. Or China develops this kind of gene editing technology, which they're on the cusp of doing, by the way.
So if
and
you have
they let me finish the scenario. And they actually start without consent editing the genes of the next generation, making them into these like super productive citizens of the Chinese state. In that situation, the United States or Europe or any other country has no choice but to make that mandatory as well. Why? Because China's GDP will shoot up, their economic power will become so great that they can easily take over the rest of the world. And this is exactly what happened with colonialism. Liberal powers developed all kinds of technologies that the rest of the world didn't have that allowed Western liberal powers to dominate the globe. And we're
Man, wasting my time with Aron. He's not going to be able to understand what I just said or respond to it. But I'm interested in this guy in the chat, Thomas Schultz. Hey, Thomas, how about you join the stream? Turn on your camera and join the stream. I'm contradicting myself. How about you come and set me straight? You're a very brilliant atheist, I assume. So you come and teach me exactly how wrong I am. You know, come on. Come and join the stream here. I'll put the link right now. And you talk a big game on the chat. Let's see you set me straight right now. Okay. Only Thomas Schultz. Come on the stream, Thomas. We're waiting for you. Set me straight. How am I wrong about what I'm saying right now? On the stream. Come on the stream, turn on your camera, show your face. Show your face. Don't be a little girl. Be a man now. Now's your chance. You can finally embarrass me in front of everyone on the live stream. Come on. Where are you, Thomas? Let's go. Come on. Okay, I'm going to assume that you're just setting up your webcam right now and you're getting ready to join. Maybe you're on your phone. It's easy to join the chat or it's easy to join the stream. Come on. Where are you? Looks like you've gone pretty quiet now, Thomas. Okay, I said only Thomas, so don't join the stream if you're not Thomas. Okay. Well, we'll just wait for you, Thomas. Talk a big game. Oh, look at this. I am an ex-Muslim woman and I will not come on. Oh, that's a surprise. Wow, why not? Why don't you come on and set me straight? You're a strong, independent woman too, I bet. You're going to really destroy me in conversation. Just come on. Just wear a mask if you're worried about your safety. Just wear a mask or something. Just come on stream. If you're a woman, why do you put the name Thomas Schultz, by the way? Are you transgender? Just let me know what pronouns you want me to address you with. I'll respect your pronouns. Just come on stream and set me straight. You talk a big game in the chat, like all these other atheists. But then when it's time to actually put up or shut up, oh, I will not come on. You give some excuse. It's typical. It's really typical of you atheists.
Still living under that kind of dominance,
So
actually.
your argument then is that atheism is bad because science can be misused, and so we should make believe in
No,
something else
that's
instead.
a caricature of my argument.
Okay,
The
so what
opening
is
statement,
the advantage then? We have science. We have my arguments, which have nothing to do with your opening statement at all. I mean, violently opposed to every bit of it. We have humanity, we have families, we have familiar connections. We want to improve some things that you are not ready to fix, and that's your problem, not mine, so that's not part of your dystopia. So what is the advantage of believing something that isn't evidently true?
the things that I cited you are true. Like these things are happening in the world.
Islam, better for society. Islam is not evidently true. What is the advantage in any religion, since no religion is evidently true?
We can concede, okay, let's say that Islam is false. You can still have a beneficial system that is based on falsehood.
Forced conformity.
No, people, the masses aren't necessarily hooked into what is true or false.
But they have to adhere to the practices. They have to do the thing, the prayers from
Like
5 times a
liberalism
day.
itself is based on complete falsehoods. The idea that men and women are exactly equal, or there's no such thing as gender.
Did you want to come to debate against liberalism,
you're just
or are
interrupting
we going to
everything
debate?
that I say.
Are we going to debate
You're the one who's
atheism?
bringing up secularism. All the best countries in the world are secular. You're the one who's talking about left versus right in your opening statement. I didn't bring up these issues. You
did
did.
in your
I'm
previous
responding
interview.
to them. I'm responding to the points that you're making.
and you
So
conflate
tell me.
them.
Right. So tell me. I gave you a scenario with gene editing, China developing it. Should that be something that we promote or prohibit in society?
If we have the option, as they showed in Gattaca, that we know that this child has a genetic propensity toward this disorder, and we can correct that. Should we correct that? I think so. I think most people would
That's
say
not my
so.
scenario.
If we know what the failure is, and we can correct that failure so that that person, that being is not going to have that congenital defect anymore, great. We could fix that. Now, so there's the advantage, one of many. We have free thought. We have the freedom of religion protected by atheist activists. And then we have, what's the advantage for Islam? We kill homosexuals and you murder anybody who doesn't believe.
You changed the scenario.
So
I
is
said gene
there a
editing-
good
Let me
thing?
finish my point. You changed the scenario that I gave you. I said we can use gene editing, for example, to reduce testosterone in males to make them more docile, less misogynistic. Is that the kind of technology that should be allowed or prohibited? Yes or no?
Why would it have to be prohibited if we can improve?
Well, a person like me, a religious person or a Christian might say, we should not mess with the human genome. We should not do gene editing. The human body is sacrosanct. That's a religious objection to these kinds of dystopian future technologies. What is the atheist objection to those technologies? That's the answer that I'm not getting from you, and you keep avoiding or diverting the topic. Give me a reason on the basis of atheism to prohibit or block these kinds of technologies.
Once again, why would I want to prohibit medical science from improving a child that would have otherwise been born?
We're not talking about a child who has defects. We're talking about any fetus, no defects.
Okay, so
can
why
you
would I
use
want
the
to-
technology to change that fetus, to take away certain undesirable traits or improve certain desirable traits like industriousness, IQ, take out aggression, take out maybe even like...
Because people are not livestock?
Why?
People are not livestock. So I'm basically describing eugenics and get him to admit that his philosophy is a pro-eugenics philosophy, because atheism has always been pro-eugenics ever since Darwin. And he keeps trying to revert back to the scenario of, oh, why can't we use medical science to help deformed children? Like, that's not what the hypothetical that I'm giving is about. That's not what that's not the crux of this issue is. It's to transform society for this H+, humanity plus, transhumanist future. And he can't really give a reason for why. And he just right now says, well, we're not livestock, so we shouldn't use this kind of technology because we're not livestock. But that's not like what atheism says. Atheism says that, well, we are livestock. We're just like other animals. As he'll explain right now. He'll contradict himself.
Why not? They're just, animals. We're animals, right?
Well, we are. We indeed.
Yeah, so
And
give
we
me
have
a
to-
reason.
and we
Give
have
me,
to
give me an
expand.
atheistic objection.
We have to expand our humanity to other species, not just restrict it and then treat humans the way we currently already mistreat other species. That's one of the morality advantages that I have over you. So now, what is the advantage? The argument is this. Atheism, not believing things that are not evidently true. Islam, believing things that are not evidently true for no good
Since
reason.
you know everything.
See, he just reverts. He can't deal with this conversation about transhumanism and gene editing, so he goes back to his bread and butter. Islam is a myth. Atheism is true. It's scientifically verified. Like that's the only thing that he understands and knows. So rather than engaging in the point that I'm trying to make is that, look, this technology is leading to a transhumanist future. All of these kinds of technologies that are being used on the human genome, on artificial intelligence, implants in the human body, virtual reality, taking your consciousness and uploading it to the cloud. All of these things, if you tell a normal person, like, oh, do you know that this is the future of humanity? They'll be horrified by that. They'll be shocked and horrified, and they'll reject it. Any normal person will reject it. Only atheists are the ones who will say, yeah, actually, that sounds pretty good. That sounds cool. That sounds great. Let's do it. So the atheists are the ones who are driving this transhumanist future. They're the ones who are pushing it and saying, there's nothing wrong. What's wrong with it? We're just like livestock. We're just like animals. That's the problem. Like this is an argument ad absurdum. This is an argument that if you take atheism to its logical conclusion, it leads to this horrific dystopia. And I've taken you step by step on how that happens. It's a combination of extreme individualism, extreme promotion of individual freedom on the one hand, and technology on the other. And atheism's rejection of all tradition and human value other than individual freedom. If you put those things in a pot and mix it up, what you get is get in the pot and eat the bugs. That is the result of it. He doesn't want to engage in at any point in that argument.
That's evidently true. Tell me if that kind of technology should be prohibited or not.
Once again, I wouldn't prohibit the technology. How many times have I got to answer the same question? Now let's get to my answer. I ask you again.
So he concedes, I would not prohibit the technology. And so then this guy, Gideon David, says, Daniel is on an atheist rant right now. Just so you know, atheism and liberalism are not the same thing. I hope Daniel doesn't conflate the two. Again, a typical moronic comment from an atheist or a liberal. You heard Aron Ra's opening statement. He's the one who started talking about secularism, the value of secular life, how it improves the quality of life, how he's against any system that restricts freedom, restricts free choice, freedom of speech. He's employing as an atheist in his opening statement. He is the one who is invoking all of these liberal concepts. And then when we point out all of the harms and damage and destruction that philosophy causes, all you atheists can say is like, no, atheism and liberalism are two different things. Do you not see how stupid that is? It's stupid and plainly, openly contradictory.
What do you bring to the table? Atheism means
Islam
we accept what's real. We don't make ourselves believe things that are not real.
What Islam brings to the table.
Society to believe things that are not real. Where's the advantage?
Islam is not real. You want us to believe something that is not real. Where is the peer-reviewed paper that says Islam is true? Show me the sources. Reddit says that Islam is false and there is no scientific paper proving that Allah is real and the Quran is true. Therefore, it is false.
Islam, I'll just stick to the example of gene editing. What Islam brings to the table is preserving the human being and preventing the kind of gene editing that is going to, down the line, completely eliminate the human race. That's what Islam provides. That's the difference.
Islam provides...
You don't. The problem with you is you don't even understand how this is horrific. That you basically say, "Oh, we can allow the technology." You say it so nonchalantly, like that is horrific to many people.
The technology that you are talking about misusing also has a practical application that I described. There's no reason to prohibit something that will cure a congenital defect. You want to deny medical science the ability to cure the congenital defect, and
No,
you think
that's a
and
straw
you think
man.
that is it. No, that's not.
That's a
That's
straw
exactly
man.
what you said. And you
I mean, there are all kinds of technologies that have beneficial effects, but we still wouldn't want them to proliferate or for them to exist or to be allowed. Like, just think about nuclear non-proliferation. The nuclear weapon is the consequence of nuclear physics and nuclear technology. Yeah, there are a lot of great applications for nuclear technology. You can create these fission reactions to boil water, create steam, and run your electric turbine. That's a good source of energy and electricity, but you also get the nuclear bomb. You also get the threat of annihilating the human race and destroying the world through nuclear war. So is the invention of nuclear power, is that really something that we would want? If we could go back in history and prevent the invention of nuclear technology, would we do so in order to prevent the potential of nuclear war making humanity extinct? Like, that is the kind of logic that the atheism doesn't exercise or doesn't entertain. Like, is it better to have the possibility of destroying all of humanity versus, getting another source of electricity? By the way, it's nuclear power is being banned all across the Western world. So even that supposed benefit is not actually being realized now. But with any kind of technology, you should be able to ask that question. What are the possibilities of this technology leading to the destruction of the human race? Even someone like Elon Musk, an atheist, raises this question with artificial intelligence. Elon Musk, I mean, it's ironic because all the other technologies that Elon Musk is funding are equally potentially disastrous for the human race. But when it comes to artificial intelligence, for some reason, he recognizes the danger. He says this technology could be one day lead to the destruction of the human race because the AI is going to get too powerful and humans will not be able to control it. And that is an existential threat. Therefore, we need to limit the pursuit of artificial intelligence. Like, that's a very simple type of utilitarian reasoning that Muslims can agree with, obviously. And I would much prefer a lower tech society. And I've said this in previous debates. I prefer a lower tech society where we don't have all of the technological advancements that we have now. And yeah, that might mean that we have less pharmaceutical drugs for certain diseases, and our medical science is less than it was in the past. But that's a trade-off I'm willing to make because the destruction of modern technology is so much worse. It's causing so much more suffering and pain and destruction. Therefore, it's justified on a very simple utilitarian analysis to limit that technology.
I think that that's the advantage of what believing a false story
So having high
provides.
testosterone is a congenital defect?
I'm sorry, what?
Having high testosterone is a congenital defect?
Why would you say that?
What about
I
low
didn't say
IQ?
that.
Having like sub 100 IQ, is that a
I
congenital
gave
defect?
you the answer to
That's
the
the
question.
scenario that I'm talking about.
Okay, so you're talking about misusing science. Should we prohibit misusing
Okay, so
science?
misuse of
Using technology that can also be used to help people not have congenital defects.
I would prefer a society
So you
where
want a
I
law-
would prefer a society where some people have congenital defects, as opposed to a society that is wiping out the human race because you've edited the genome into something completely different.
so we both agree
I would
that's not
prefer
going to
the
happen
congenital defect
because
society.
I don't promote misuse of science, but I will promote the existence
Who decides? Wait, maybe I'm about to say exactly this.
Decides
of the
what's misuse.
technology.
Who decides what's misuse? Who decides what's misuse of technology? And on what basis do we decide what is misuse? Because according to an atheistic view of the world, I mean, the only thing that's real is pleasure. The only thing that's real is pleasure and pain. Other things like, Why not just abort every baby that has these traits that we don't like, that are not adaptive, that are not suitable for survival? Why don't we just get rid of every useless person? Useless is the word that Yuval Harari, the atheist, was using, that we quoted earlier. Why don't we just get rid of the useless people, or put them on this kind of regimen of antidepressants and video game distractions and pornography? Like, why don't we do that? There's nothing in atheism that stops that and prevents that. There's nothing in atheism that will tell you, no, that's wrong, because there are values that go beyond physical pleasure and pain of an individual. There are higher transcendent values that you cannot reduce to something material. You cannot reduce to pleasure and pain. And those values are worth preserving. Atheism rejects all of that. That's why it's so dangerous. That's why atheism is so destructive. That is the core of the argument.
The existence of the technology that can also not be misused, but be used properly to cure congenital defects. Now,
We actually are at the point at which we have to go into the closing statements, just because otherwise we're going to be bumping into the Q&A.
okay.
Can we just continue? Let's just continue.
No, I got to hear your closing statement. After hearing how distorted
Yeah,
your
after
opening
hearing
was,
your nonsense,
I got to hear your
I think we
closing.
have to get the closing statement too. I agree.
We're going to, Daniel, start for the opening, so Daniel will have your closing statement first. The floor is all yours.
Wait, why me? I went first in the opening. I thought it was the opposite.
Yeah, we hadn't talked about this. So, do you have a preference, both sides? Are you okay, Aron?
I don't really need a closing statement. I'll give you this, maybe 1 minute in a closing statement. So atheism means we accept what's real. We don't make ourselves believe things that are not evidently true. I don't see an advantage to believing things that are not evidently true. That's called lying. So there's no reason to do that. He's advocating that it would be better for society to believe things that are not evidently true. Specific things that also have implications such as death to apostates and homosexuals in some cases. So he's talking about a forced conformity that I think is dystopian. My utopia, his dystopia, vice versa. And I don't think Islam ever brought anything to the table, not anything we want.
You got it. And Daniel, the floor is yours for your 4-minute vote.
Yeah, so I think that Aron has a completely hoax understanding of liberalism and the history of liberalism. He's completely ignorant about colonialism. He's ignorant about the liberal policies within Europe and within America. He doesn't experience any kind of authoritarian measures from these liberal governments, liberal in the philosophical sense, because he himself is a liberal. That's why he doesn't experience the totalitarian nature of liberalism. But any theist, any person who actually values traditional life, values marriage, values family, values community, values God, this is a hellscape that we're living in, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. He makes these very childish claims about free speech, and then when I ask him about Holocaust denial, he waffles and he can't make up his mind. I point out that all of these countries do have restrictions on freedom, as seen historically and in the present. He's not conversant with any of that history or those kinds of political facts. He asks, what does Islam provide humanity? That's what the debate was about. What is better for society? I gave an entire opening statement about how Islam blocks the technologies that are going to literally wipe out the human race, the technologies that are going to put us into this dystopia, living in the pod. It's already happening. We can look at a city like New York City, we can look at Beijing, we can look at San Francisco. People are already living in the pods. And this is a dystopia. Every normal person will see that and will think, I don't want that for myself, I don't want that for my children, but that is an impending reality. And Aron wasn't conversant with any of that. I'm saying that Islam and a commitment to these kinds of values, like the value of being a human being, the value of marriage and family and community, that's what blocks that dystopia from taking us over. But if your ethic and your morality and your worldview is just based on maximizing personal pleasure, well, if that's what you want to do, who's to stop you? We should all be free and happy and live the way that we want. That kind of logic, step by step, will take you to the pod. That is exactly what is happening. And you have philosophers, atheist philosophers, by the way, like Yuval Harari, saying that, yeah, most of humanity in the future, because of AI and automation, most of society is useless. They'll just have to entertain themselves through drugs and through pornography and video games. That's the solution for the majority of society, because humanity is useless. That kind of logic is coming directly from atheism, and this ethic of maximizing freedom, maximizing liberty, maximizing pleasure, bodily pleasures. Islam and other religions, by the way, other traditional religions say, no, there are important values that we have to preserve, important institutions that we have to preserve, and that blocks the technology. Yes, I say Islam is the best because I think Islam is the most resistant to these kinds of changes. Other religions have, unfortunately, increasingly sold out, increasingly liberalized, but I would much rather this be a Christian nationalist society or a Jewish nationalist society or even a Hindu nationalist society as opposed to an atheistic society, because it is that much more dystopian and that much worse. Islam is the best option that we have for improving society. Atheism is just a nightmare, a dystopic nightmare. Unfortunately, Aron could not respond to any of the points that I brought up.
And with that, we'll go into the Q&A. If you guys could do me a favor, both Aron and Daniel, if you could reread the question for the audience member as they ask it, just to be sure that everybody, both in the room and online, hears it. We'll take questions. Jackson, thanks so much for this question.
I have a question for Daniel, right? No. What's your name?
Aron.
Well, I thought Daniel did a better job, but my question for you is, you list all these countries that supposedly are, more free at the start of your opening.
Yeah, they didn't start out that way. That's important, because all of these places where they're...
You can't even finish this question.
You list all these countries that are supposedly more free. Those countries also have a litany of problems that arise due to the fact that there is no morality, there's no effort to protect humanity, such as women sleeping around. You have all this transgenderism, you have this mental illness in society, everyone's fat. You have just countless problems. You have illicit corruption. So, at the end of the day, how do you value freedom over the success of humanity?
I don't. I'm not a liberal in the sense that I was defining. I am a leftist, which I realize he's using a different definition, which is why we were talking past each other. But leftist means that I'm going to be more favoring the community, not just myself. It's not about my needs. It's the needs of the many over the one. So I don't value freedom, my own freedom, over humanity. I value humanity more.
Yeah, so he values the community, he values humanity more than individual freedom. Then why are you promoting just unrestricted use of technology? Why are you saying that, yeah, there's no reason to prohibit these technologies and they can proliferate, so what? Like, if you care about humanity, why didn't you say that before? You should have said that, well, technologies that threaten humanity should be restricted. Speech that threatens humanity should be restricted. Political parties that threaten humanity should be restricted, even if they're advocating for individual liberty, individual freedom, women's rights, LGBT rights that threaten humanity and the proliferation of humanity, because there's not going to be a humanity when the birth rate plummets. It has plummeted, and you're not even at replacement levels for your population. Your population is dying out. Okay, if you're concerned about that, supposedly, what policies are you going to take to prevent that kind of population collapse? What kind of policies are you going to enact in order to prevent these problems, since you're so pro-humanity? Why aren't you restricting these kinds of ideologies that destroy humanity, that destroy community? So these atheists talk from both sides of their mouths. They don't even realize, they don't recognize the contradiction in what they're saying. I'm pro-humanity. I'm pro-community. I just favor every single policy that is anti-human, anti-community. And all of the problems I have with Islam are things where Islam is trying to preserve community. Islam is trying to preserve family. Islam is trying to preserve marriage. Okay. Hijab, forcing women to cover themselves, forcing women and men to be separate. that preserves marriage, that preserves family, that preserves community. Having a punishment for apostasy to deter apostasy, to prevent blasphemy, that is what is preserving the community. That's what preserves the community. All these kinds of problems that these atheists have with Islam, because those policies are anti-liberal or anti-leftist or whatever, those are things that are in favor of these values that then Aron, at the end of the debate, wants to say that he values. He doesn't even get the contradiction.
So then why would you oppose a punishment for apostasy, for example? That is a communitarian ethic, preserving
That's
the
not an
interests of
ethic.
the
It's the
preserving the interests of the community over your individual right to blaspheme. That is exactly the
Because
logic.
there is no advantage in the community being deceived.
No, there is an advantage in preserving the community. You say that you value community.
You say that there's an advantage to the community being deceived.
Preserving the community, yes. That's your assumption that that's deception. But imagine there is
The religion is a
Asian
deception.
community. Imagine there's an Asian community or a Chinese community or a Canadian community. That group has a set of rules. Don't suddenly start insulting Canadian values or Canadian nationality. Otherwise, we'll kick you out of the group. That's
To continue with your question, a lot of these countries that were on that list did not start out that way. They actually took the example from the United States becoming the first secular nation, and where we fell away from that ourselves, other nations adopted it. France was not a great place to live at the time that he's talking about, which was also the time that I was talking about. France improved after that, and a number of these other nations did too. Now, whether they all did a spectacular job is debatable, but that's what they're all aiming for. And they understand that secularism is the way to go. That's the best way to go. Whereas forced conformity to any religion is not.
Throughout the history of these secular societies, you had the kind of oppression and totalitarianism that Aron is supposedly against, even according to his liberal standards. So guess what? Gay marriage only became legal less than 10 years ago in most of the West. So prior to 10 years ago, all of these secular societies, according to you and your standard, were oppressive against homosexuals and LGBT, right? So, and in all of these countries, prior to 5 years ago, if you're a trans child, you were not allowed to get gender-changing surgery, hormone therapy, prior to 5 years ago. So that means that prior to 5 years ago or 10 years ago, all of this secular history, these secular nations were oppressive, evil, destructive, totalitarian societies because they're not acknowledging LGBT rights. That's according to your own standard, your own atheist standard. So we're still not free. Even these secular societies now are not fully free because, as these activists, social justice warriors will say that, there's still entrenched patriarchy and white privilege and the hoax is that, we're just constantly improving. We're constantly increasing the amounts of rights that people have. We're constantly increasing the freedom that we have. Yeah, you are increasing the freedom, individual liberty. Yeah, that is increasing at the expense of everything else, at the expense of every other value. That's the problem. That's why you're destroying humanity, because even the human race is not as important as individual freedom and constantly maximizing individual freedom. That's the whole argument against liberalism.
Yeah, let's start on the far back.
So a couple things. You said, Mr. Pikachu, that you would rather have a Hindu nationalist country rather than an atheistic country. Have you seen what's happening in India to Muslims?
Yeah, the question, should I repeat it? So the question was, have you seen what is happening to Muslims in India? So I have condemned Hindutva, Hindu nationalism, Hindu fascism, basically.
Hold on, we got to give him a chance to respond.
Yeah, so that's a very
kind
good
of
question.
statement.
Will I still prefer to live in a Hindu nationalist society than an atheistic society? Yes, because the Hindu society is going to still preserve certain values that Muslims can benefit from. So in India, again, it's oppression, it is fascistic. Muslims are being literally killed for expressing their religious beliefs. But if a Muslim were to hide his religious beliefs and just pray at home, he could still have a successful marriage, he could have a very robust family life, he could not worry about his children being taken away from him for...
Can I address
you
that
can-
question too?
Well, you didn't let me finish answering the question, so let me finish answering.
People getting lynched for eating meat.
No, let me answer.
For the suspicion of eating meat, right?
Yeah, so what I'm saying,
That doesn't sound a very free society to me.
I didn't say Hindutva society was a free society.
I don't think it's beneficial to Muslims either, though.
Right,
If
but
you're getting lynched for the suspicion of eating
okay,
meat,
so let me answer the question.
Give him a chance, just to-
You have to let me answer.
Q&A, but-
Woman moment.
This is not like a dialogue. You asked your question, I'm answering it. So you can sit down now. But look, we're comparing, I'm not Hindutva society versus atheistic society. The atheistic society is going to be much worse in the long run. It is going to be much more totalitarian. China is the model that we're seeing right now, and that's being rolled out to European society, American society as well. That vision of the future, get in the pod and eat the bugs, that is objectively worse than a highly oppressive, highly totalitarian Hindu society, Hindutva society. That society.
It's like such a simple argument. Like one model of life will end up in the destruction of the human race. Okay, that's what we have on one hand with atheism. The other society is bad. It's not good, but at least humanity is not going to be wiped out, and we're not going to be in the pod eating bugs. So those are the two options. If we're restricting ourselves to either humanity goes extinct because we've been transformed into some kind of genetically modified humanoid creatures, or we're literally living in a virtual reality because everything is now controlled by AI. That's one option that we're racing towards because of atheism. Or it's like a, very restrictive Hindutva society, like Muslims can't, show their Islam publicly. It's very restricted. So comparing those two, objectively speaking, the preservation of human life, even if it's in a worse state, is better objectively. It's like such a simple point, but that moron questioner, who is actually like a YouTube streamer, as I found out later. I didn't recognize her because I don't know like these no-name streamers, and I think she's like an ex-Muslim, just making a moronic point, and she's so brazen too. Like she wanted to debate me right there, and we have a clip of her actually that we're gonna publish soon where she confronts me after the debate, and that's actually gonna be entertaining. We'll release that soon, inshallah. But yeah, so anyway, the Q&A, you can go through it. Like there was no question that threw me off or was surprising. Some of those answers we're going to probably clip in coming weeks and have them separate, but let me just address comments. So there were a lot of super chats. Barakallahu feek, guys. Okay, if you originally Tawheed, Jazakallah khair. If you want to know the reality of these rand khalis, please research Fifth Column. These people, wallahi, are the ultimate traitors. May Allah protect the deen and the ummah from their evil satanic plots. Ameen. This is a comment. Jazakallah khair for your super chat. Indonesia investigating acts of bioterrorism. 300 children killed from imported ingredients in child cough medicine. Muslims wake up. The Zionist plot is real. Protect the children. Don't know if that's the case, but very sad if that's true. What do you think that about Aron being a Satanist and giving a talk at a Satanist convention? Yeah, I mean, look at him. Just look at him. That answers any kind of thoughts or assumptions that we might have about him. Hassan, Jazakallah khair, we Muslims should never fight among each other. Okay. What are good lectures for learning evolution versus seeing it as a fact of evolution, like Aron preaches? So there are a lot of lectures that you can find from people like James Tour, Tour. He has a lot of material debunking evolution. You can also look at What Darwin Got Wrong by Jerry Fodor is an excellent book that philosophically deconstructs evolution or natural selection. You can also look at online about how the mathematical objection to evolution, I believe is the title, where David Berlinski and Stephen Mayer talk about the mathematical problem with evolution. That's online, has millions of views. It's a very good lecture. Watch that. Okay. Jazakallah khair. Web Zionist civilization had been around 1400 years. No one would be left. Islam preserved Beni Israel, Orthodox Christianity, Greek philosophy, and ancient Kemet. Fact, past 200 years, Zionist equals Dajjal. Jazakallah khair for your super chat. Let's see. I can show evolution and prove it to you too. LOL, I'd love to see him try. He should look at the plethora of failed evolution lab tests. Yeah, there's plenty of counter evidence to evolution. His friends in the Stone Age said so. I don't know what that refers to. Assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you doing? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I'm doing fine. Alhamdulillah. Thanks for asking. Okay, so here's a super sticker. Sheikh Muhammad, Jazakallah khair. Here's a comment. Knowledge is knowledge. What do we do with information is up to the individual. From Gideon David again. Well, no, that's the thing. Some knowledge is actually very dangerous. And it's, like this, how to develop a nuclear bomb. That's just knowledge, right? It's just knowledge of how to develop weapons of mass destruction or weapons or technologies to fundamentally change the human body, or technology that will allow humans to be enslaved basically by this totalitarian system or this social credit system. You have technology, AI technology that can recognize faces, facial recognition. Nowhere that you can go in the world today is there a second that you're not being surveilled, is not a second that you can have privacy, is not a second that you can have any kind of free thought. Why? Because every information channel is controlled. This is all done through technology. You cannot feel safe at any part of the world because you are being tracked because of your phone or because of facial recognition and surveillance systems and satellites. At any moment, if the government decides to take you out, they can do that. How? Through drone technology. Drones can be sent to take you out, and this has happened by by the policy set by the Obama administration, that whoever we decide is an extremist or a terrorist on our definition based on their ideas and what they advocate, we can determine that they are a terrorist and we can take them out through drones. And at any point, your life is going to be ended. This is all facilitated through technology. So this kind of hellscape that we're living in right now, and it's only going to get worse and worse and worse, is on the basis of information, the technology, the science. And the argument is very simple, and you atheists can't get it through your heads. It's not just information in the abstract. It's information in context of this liberal morality, this liberalism that has a history of totalitarianism, and technology and information is only making that system stronger. It's only making it stronger, more powerful, more centralized, and therefore more totalitarian. And you don't experience that because you are liberal. You've been indoctrinated by liberalism. So of course you think that that's, oh, you just imagine like this neutral playing field, this neutral world where we can just, information, let's think about these ideas. And let's think about, this kind of science or that kind of science. Because you don't experience how destructive, how constraining, how oppressive information can be, how oppressive technology can be. If you lived in, 8th century, 9th century Umayyad caliphate of Islam, the caliph is enforcing strict Sharia law. He can't drone you. He can't surveil you. He can't monitor your social media and find out what you've been saying about his caliphate and therefore restrict your bank account. He can't force you to be injected with certain chemicals. And if you don't get the injection, you're going to be fired from your job and you can't travel. He can't do any of those things. He can't, he can't entice your wife with no fault divorce. He can't entice your wife with all kinds of government programs so that she can leave you in an instant, basically, no matter what. He can't do any of these kinds of things. And the big reason why is he doesn't have the technology. Even if he wanted to, he doesn't have the technology to do that. You would have a much better quality of life under the Umayyad Caliphate, under any of the pre-modern caliphates, or many of these pre-modern societies. Not all, but many of the pre-modern societies. Your quality of life would actually be much better than it is today, and much better than, this is a question for atheists. Is it better to live 500 years ago, all of your human rights aren't being respected, but compare that to living in the pod and eating the bugs? Which one is better? When you live in the pod and eat the bugs, all of your physical needs are being met. All of your individual desires are being met through technological means, through virtual reality. Like, that's the Matrix. Is that better? Or living a low-tech life 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, in one of these theocratic societies? That's what you should answer. That's the real question that we're not seeing atheists answer, because the answer is obvious. Another point, right, Daniel, but the left is attempting to censor speech, enforce LGBT on the community. That isn't maximizing individual rights. That's imposing on agenda through state force, i.e. not liberalism. First of all, it's not just the left. Donald Trump was very much in favor of pro-LGBT policies. He tried to enforce it throughout the Muslim world. His State Department was actively involved with making sure that every country in the world has legalized homosexuality. That was Donald Trump's State Department policy. Very pro-LGBT. Donald Trump himself has come out and saying he 100% supports LGBT agenda, and he's against hate. He's against any kind of hatred or discrimination towards this community. That's coming from the right wing. There's no difference between the left and the right on the only difference between the left and the right. Take someone like Matt Walsh or Ben Shapiro. Their only problem with LGBT is just don't, give children hormones. That's the only problem that they have with LGBT. Everything else, they're on board. Matt Walsh is 100% pro-gay marriage. He's 100% pro-transgender. Everyone should have the right to do whatever they want. That's individualism. That's maximizing individual rights. Go watch your heroes, Matt Walsh, and see what he has to say about individual rights, and why and have him explain that's why he supports transgenders and LGBT. The only problem he has is, just acknowledge that being a female means that you're a female, and just acknowledge that children shouldn't be given hormone therapy. If they're 18 years old as adults, no problem. It's your individual choice. You have the right. That's what makes America so great. That's what makes America so great. We have the rights. You have the right to castrate yourself. You have the right to take hormones, and you have the right to. That's what makes America so beautiful. You can do whatever you want in the privacy of your own bedroom and in school, and we won't discriminate. And that's what makes America the land of the free and the home of the brave. These are your conservatives, your Matt Walsh type, Ben Shapiro type, Jordan Peterson type conservatives. That's their message. It's not. It's a liberal, maximizing individual freedom message. Okay, so I'll take one more question, and then I gotta go. Yeah, because it's almost 4 hours. It's way longer than I wanted to do. Daniel, a question that I've had for some time. Why do you prefer refuting atheism from this more social arguments rather than theological arguments? Is it because they believe in pragmatic truths? Well, I prefer it because it's low-hanging fruit. Basically, it's these atheists have gotten a free ride and have gone off scot-free without being confronted about the social results of their ideology. They haven't had to answer for that. So that's why I press them on it, because time to pay the piper, time to like, okay, defend these social results of your ideology. Defend, like, you want to just assert that it's the best system and it is the most rational scientific system. But guess what? Look at the results of this kind of social program and this ideology. So address that. And none of them can do it. So Daniel, quick question. Does Aron look depressed to you too? Yeah, he seemed very depressed in person. Like, he had a lot on his mind. So I don't know why. I try to be nice to him too. Like, before the debate, I went and shook his hand, introduced myself, and but he just seemed off. Okay. Matt Dillahunty would have been a better opponent. Not really. Like, Dillahunty is the same kind of ignorant person. So I'm happy to debate Matt Dillahunty as long as it's a fair debate, like a fair format. The thing about Matt Dillahunty is he just picks debates that favor his position, like overwhelmingly favor his position, and put him in an overwhelming advantage in the debate. So if he wants to agree to a fair debate on a fair topic, I'm happy to debate him. I was even happy to debate him on a very difficult topic to have like a single debate on, which is there good evidence for God? I was up for debating him on that. He rejected it, even though he's done like dozens of debates on is there good evidence for God. He said no. That was actually what was proposed for this debate on modern day debates, and he rejected that. I'll tell you the story of it. That's why I ended up debating Aron Ra instead of Matt Dillahunty. But the Matt Dillahunty debate, he said, no, I don't want to debate, is there good evidence for God? Which that kind of debate is 100% in the atheist's advantage, because he can just sit back. I can give all kinds of arguments and evidence. And he can say, I'm not convinced by that. No, that doesn't convince me. No. Like that makes you the interrogator in full control. And then it's really an uphill battle for the opponent to give the evidence and justify, because his point is going to be again and again, oh, that's not scientific evidence. No, only scientific evidence. Only scientific evidence can be good evidence for God. Only scientific evidence or something that's peer reviewed. Okay, so then if that's the only evidence that you'll accept, we're acknowledging, Muslims, Christians, theists acknowledge that that's not the main evidence for God, or that is not evidence for God. You're not going to get evidence from a scientific paper or a scientific study. That's not what God is. That is not the reality of God. But that's scientific knowledge is not the only kind of knowledge. Like that's basically how you'd approach that kind of debate. But even that like kind of debate he rejected. What he wanted to debate is Islam true? And he had that debate with some other Muslim guy. and I haven't watched it, but I can just imagine how that went. But I said, look, I'll debate, is Islam true? But we need like more than just an hour and a half. Like an hour and a half of debate and then 30 minutes of Q&A, like this debate. We need like, I have to establish that Islam is true. I need to address the epistemology. I need to address the morality. I need to address, why is Islam true as opposed to Christianity, as opposed to Judaism, as opposed to Hinduism? That is a tall order of what I have to establish in a debate. I can establish it. I can debate that, but I just need time. I need like a structure and a format to do so. Not like a conversation where you're going to interrupt me every minute or every second like Aron did, and I can't get my points out. Like, we need a structured debate. Yeah, we can have open conversation for parts of it or even the majority of it, but give me enough time to go through these different aspects. We need at least 3 hours. We need at least, or let's say, 2 hours and 45 minutes of time to go through each of these points to give me a fair shake. Because when a Muslim debates this issue of Islam is Islam true, or when Christians debate, is Christianity true, we're playing on it's like we don't have the home field advantage. The atheist has the home field advantage because all of society has been secularized and liberalized, and everyone's intuitions about what's true and false is on the basis of secularism and liberalism and atheism. So whenever we have these debates, we have the disadvantage, and the atheist has the home field advantage. So it's an uphill battle. We just need time. Just give us a fair shake. We're happy to debate that. But Dillahunty was, I don't think it was Dillahunty. It was just the format of the conference. We couldn't get like a 3-hour time slot, which is understandable. But the original topic that Dillahunty had accepted, but then he rejected later, as far as I could tell, was, is there good evidence for God? He didn't want to debate that. All right, guys. So I appreciate everyone's super chats and your chats in the live stream. I have to go. Yeah, I answered like all these questions already. Like, people repeat their questions. Okay, Barakallahu fikum. I will see you guys in the next debate or live stream. There is an upcoming debate that I have with a Christian that will be moderated by Modern Day Debates, but it's happening in April. Inshallah, I'll have some other debates early next year and other exciting projects coming out. Make sure to like and subscribe to Muslim Skeptic. I'm going to do a full commentary on Aron Ra and Matt Dillahunty. They reacted to this debate at DebateCon. They reacted to it, and I'm going to react to their reaction. And what's interesting is that Matt Dillahunty says, a lot of things about this transhumanist future sound great. So, but that reaction is only going to be for Alesna students. Go to alesna.org to register and enroll as a student, and then you'll have access to that live stream and about 16 or 17 other live streams that I've done so far, where me and the students discuss all kinds of stuff. So join Alesna Institute, register, enroll, and you'll get access to all of that content, inshallah. I appreciate everyone, and we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.